Welcome to another episode of Submission Radio. It's the 14th of June. I'm Dennis Shkaratov here with Casper Ozlowski. Got a big episode for you guys this week. We have three guests and one very special guest, a guy that we're big fans of. Cass, let the people know, who do we have on the program this week?
Four big guests. We have, first on the show will be Bobby Lashley. He's fighting at Bellator 138, a last-minute opponent change. I'm glad we got him on the show this week and not the previous week, so we can talk about his opponent change, a whole bunch of other stuff, pro wrestling. I heard this guy was in a bank robbery, not that he robbed the bank, but he was a victim in a bank robbery well before well before he became a star. So there's lots to talk about with Bobby Lashley. We have Gunnar Nelson. I believe he will be on the show second right after Bobby Lashley. He's fighting John Hathaway at UFC 189. He's currently in Las Vegas with Conor McGregor. They're getting up to stuff. If you watch their Instagram, those guys are out of control. So we're going to have Gunnar Nelson. And then we have also Mark Hunt. Really quick chat with Mark Hunt. This isn't going to be one of our normal interviews where we have about, sit down, half an hour, chat, have some tea and biscuits with our guests. It's a really quick one, just a quick catch up. We do have a time limit set. So it's just going to be, see how Mark Hunt's doing, things like that. Still quite a few things we want to ask him. And then Dave Meltzer. Wrestling fans will know him from the Wrestling Observer newsletter. This guy basically, for any MMA fans who don't know who Dave Meltzer is, and you would have actually known because he's part of MMA fighting now, he gives out the facts and the figures. I was watching the other day a video where Dana White was blasting this guy over some things that he said about their ratings. I think that was from a couple of years ago. But essentially, as far as pro wrestling journalism, he is the man, and he continues to bring that high-level standard into MMA. So he's always got interesting stuff to say. So we're going to have Dave Meltzer on just to chat about big things that have been happening in the UFC recently. We will not, however, be chatting to him about UFC 188 because that is Dennis and myself, or my specialty, and that's, as usual, going to be a fair bit of a chat, and Dave only has a certain amount of time. So, with all that said, it's a pretty big show this week.
Oh, that's right, guys. And if you haven't yet, make sure to jump on Twitter and check us out at SubmissionAUS. We've got a lot of stuff popping up there, all the updates, separate interviews, exclusive content, always happening. And Cass, I have to say that we do a thing for people that don't know. It's called the Submission Radio Technique of the Week. Really set up for people, a lot of people who are just getting into grappling, and also people that are doing grappling. They want to see some cool basic moves, some cool new fancy moves to add to their repertoire. We've got some new moves with Buffy, a girl from Australian Elite Team. She's a very experienced brown belt, won a bunch of competitions, and she brings a different perspective to our technique of the week. And we just had quite recently a very cool technique from her. How to do a triangle from S-mount for people with short legs. I mean, this is a very cool technique. Jump on and check us out. If you haven't yet subscribed, youtube.com/Submission Radio AU. I know a lot of listeners check us out on iTunes or Stitcher or TuneIn. If you get a chance, jump on the channel. There's a lot of really great content, and we're constantly trying to bring you guys more and more, a lot of exclusive interviews, a lot of video interviews. So jump on there and just have a bit of a play around. Tell us what you think. We always love hearing your feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are listening on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, anything like that, SoundCloud is actually separate, but if you are listening on iTunes and things like that, don't forget, give us a rating, guys. We really appreciate it. It definitely helps the show. And I want to thank a lot of the people who sometimes listen to us on those platforms and then jump on YouTube just to give us a like or just to drop a comment. That means a huge amount to us, and like we say every week, we do check those comments ourselves. We always love reading them. We always love getting your feedback. I'll say now, give us your feedback. Tell us what you thought of UFC 188. We've got some mixed opinions on this card, but before we get into all that, I think it's time for our first guest, and I believe, Dennis, you'll be the one introducing him.
Our next guest is one of the most successful pro wrestlers to make a crossover to MMA, taking on Dan Charles at Bellator 138. He is a former Shark Fights and XFN heavyweight champion. It's our pleasure to welcome Bobby Lashley to Submission Radio. Welcome to the show, Bobby.
Hey, thank you, man.
We really appreciate you being on the show, Bobby. Now, before we get into your new opponent, obviously James Thompson is out, Dan Charles is in. Just want to talk a little bit about your past. Fans may not know that you had an Olympic aspiration in 2003. However, you couldn't go through with competing because you suffered a knee injury while doing business at a bank where robbery broke out. Tell us, is this true? And could you please tell us a little bit about what happened?
It is, man. It was a crazy story. It was a crazy little time. I mean, I was actually just going in the bank to deposit some money, and these guys came in, kicked the door down, and they actually shot at me. My back was turned, but I just saw everybody from the front kind of ducking down and screaming and diving. So I took a dive, landed on the floor, and it busted my knee open. And at that point, I had to have 2 surgeries after it, and that essentially just ended my amateur wrestling career.
Wow. And I mean, it's all worked out for the best, so things happen for a reason, but that's just a crazy story. Just wondering, soon afterwards when you went into pro wrestling, obviously you had a passion for MMA. Did you ever consider going into MMA instead of pro wrestling straight away from the get-go?
Well, yeah, I mean, just being a wrestler, a lot of the guys that I trained with from the beginning went straight into it. So I had a lot of friends that were doing it, but at the time, I mean, I got offered a pro wrestling contract, one like right after my surgery. So I was basically sitting with a leg brace on, and I didn't think I was going to be able to do any kind of combat sports at the time. So the only thing I was really looking forward to was really getting myself healthy and going into pro wrestling. But yeah, when I first started, there was a lot of guys that I'm good friends with that moved up the rankings really quick, and I trained with, and now I get an opportunity to get back and train with them now. So you never know what's going to happen, but I like the way things happen for me. I'm happy that I went to pro wrestling first, and I enjoy it, and I still do it now, but I still kind of want to fight. So I'm trying to do as much as I can while I have the time.
Yeah, for sure. And, with a lot of the guys in the WWE and I think pro wrestling in general, there's a lot of MMA fans. I mean, obviously CM Punk, Shane McMahon, guys like The Undertaker. How do you feel knowing that there's a lot of guys that like MMA but didn't actually go all out and do MMA, whereas you're one of the few guys that have made the transition and made a successful transition and really, went out and followed your dream?
Well, it's one of those things where you can't do half-assed. Either you got to jump in full board, or you got to stay out. So I know some of the guys that are big fans, they do some jiu-jitsu, they may get some mitts and stuff like that, but they know what kind of dedication needs. And some of the guys are still kind of questioning it right now. So I think we might have a few other guys jump across the board and try a fight or two. I'm happy for Punk, and I'm happy for anybody else who wants to do it. You only live once, and you only have a short window to do what you want to do. So if they want to do it, they're going to do it quick.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let's talk about your training, because you are currently wrestling for TNA, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. You have quite a big part there. How difficult is it for you to juggle training MMA, getting ready for your fight, while also being pretty much one of the biggest stars in TNA?
This has been probably the easiest ride for me for a couple different things. Working with Dixie Carter and the crew over there at TNA, they're super supportive for my fights. And when we came into it, we talked about it. I didn't sign either one of the contracts without talking to both parties, and they were both on board and saying, we want you to wrestle and we want you to fight. So Bellator wanted me to still pro wrestle. They said, hey, if your schedule is conducive of you training and being able to do both, of course we'd love for you to do it. I mean, why not? And then with the wrestling, they're like, yeah, you can bring some legitimacy over to wrestling, because you can tell all the fans, the MMA fans, and everybody that we're not just. Some people just think that these guys just can and hit the gym and lift weights. We had some legitimate athletes. We had Kurt Angle, Olympic champion, Shelton Benjamin. He was a highly decorated. Him, Charlie Haas. There were so many athletes that they had in pro wrestling. So it's been really good, man. My schedule with TNA is super light. We do about 5-6 shows in a row every month and a half. So I'm home most of the time, so I'm able to train full time. And then when I fight, I make sure I take my fights either before one of the big stretch of shows or well afterwards. So they're working with me great. I think both of them want to see me succeed. So this has been really, really good, and I'm happy that I'm with the two right now, because I don't think anybody else would have given me the opportunity to be able to do both.
Oh, no, absolutely. And you mentioned a few names there like Shelton Benjamin and Kurt Angle. Just wondering, when it comes to Kurt, have you had a bit of a wrestle with him? Has he sort of shown you a few tips and tricks? And have you had a chance to train with him? Because we know that he wanted to go in MMA at one point but couldn't pass a physical, but obviously a wealth of knowledge when it comes to grappling.
Yeah. Kurt's just got it to his own. I always talk with Kurt, but Kurt's so focused right now. He has a lot on his plate, with his family. He's been doing some acting stuff, and then he's holding the title over at TNA. So he's super, super busy. So the times when me and Kurt talk, it's mainly about family life and what's going on with the show and everything like that. I wish he would have had an opportunity to come over, but I don't think his body would have been able to handle the type of training and everything. But if in his younger days, I think Kurt would have been a beast, and he would have been a true force to reckon with. But right now, we talk. We just go. It's not more of any technique or anything like that. It's just, hey, Kurt, what's going on? How's your family? then we talk about wrestling.
Now, Bobby, you've had an opponent change. James Thompson has been injured and has been pulled from the bout. This is the second time the fight's been cancelled in 4 months, with you previously getting injured and unable to fight him at Bellator 134. What were your thoughts when you found out that this fight wasn't happening again?
I knew it. I was talking to somebody beforehand. I was like, man, you know, as much as I want to fight him, first of all, I was surprised that he took the fight in the first place. The first time, I don't think the fight was really scheduled. It was just one of those things where they wanted it to happen. I wasn't ready for it. I had injured my hand earlier in the year, so the fight wasn't really been scheduled. So when the fight didn't come to fruition at the end, it was kind of one of those things where I had to take the heat for it, which I don't mind doing. This time, on the other hand, he signed the contract. I signed the contract. Everything was ready to go. But I was super surprised that he took it in the first place, because we fought before, and the first time, I mean, I felt I beat him up pretty bad, and I was like, I can't believe he wants to take that, excuse my language, ass whooping again. Mm. And then I was like, when's the time? I was just waiting for the time for him to drop out, and sure enough, he dropped out. So I was training for him. And then even with the opponent change, it kind of sucks a little bit, because when you go into camp, you don't. For me, I don't super study my opponent, but you know, I knew it was going to be James Thompson, so I knew what to expect of it. Knew he was going to come in here real heavy. He's going to charge. He's going to try to hold. He's going to try to like weigh on me and everything like that. So we based our camp completely around him. So now with the new guy coming in, I mean, the guy's good. He's got a 9-2 record, and but he's going to be a little lighter. He's going to be a little quicker. He's going to be a different fighter. It's a different opponent. So you know, a lot of times you come in and say, look, the guy took it at the last minute, but I took it at the last minute also, because it's a completely different opponent than we trained for the past 5-6 weeks. So I don't mind it. You know, I'm ready, and I told them that I'm ready. So when they changed the opponent, I was like, put somebody else in there and let's go. Because, you know, going into training camp, you put a lot into training camp. The last thing that I want to do is, like, back out of a fight now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And obviously James had previously beaten you once. I'm just wondering, is this a case where James Thompson is someone that you want to fight to avenge that loss? Or are you sort of giving up on this rematch because it hasn't happened so many times? If you win this fight, will you just sort of move on to the next opponent?
You know, I want to, but it has to happen. You know, Bellator wants it to happen, and I know that a lot of fans are kind of excited about it happening. It's got to happen. And I know he's not hurt. I don't know what his case is. I don't know what the situation is, but I know he can go out there and he can take the fight. So hopefully after this fight, I'm going to try to call him out right away. If this fight goes the way I plan for it to go, I'm going to call him out right away and say, hey, you know, no disrespect, but I want you to get your ass out here and fight. We got to have that fight, because there's a lot of speculations. I mean, a lot of people watch the fight, and it's torn. Most of the people say I won, but at the end of the fight, they raise his hand. So let's fix that. Let's see who really won. Let's go out there and fight. Hopefully we can fight in July. I know they got fight cards coming up every month with Bellator, and I'm going to stay in camp just in case the opportunity comes up. You know, people get hurt all the time, so I'm going to stay ready. So hopefully he can get back. Maybe he can take some rehab time and be ready for July. If he does, then that's what we're going to fight.
Sure. Now, so his replacement is obviously Dan Charles, a man who's a 3-sport athlete in high school with wrestling, football, baseball, and who's won his last 2 fights in Bellator. When it comes to Dan, most of his wins are by KO, TKO. Does it worry you at all going into a fight? You said obviously you trained for a completely different fighter. You know, is that a concern for you at all?
Yeah, well, everything's kind of a concern. Not. You know, I'm not really worried about it to the point where, I'm worried about the guy. Everything's going to be a concern because it's a fight. And when you're a heavyweight, 200-plus pounds, swinging heavy leather, you know, anything can happen. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be cautious out there, of course, but I just had such a good I felt long time. So I don't think he's going to be ready for the kind of pressure that we're in this fight.
No, absolutely. Now, Dan's a young and up-and-coming guy. In this sort of scenario, there's no pressure going into the fight for him because people don't really expect him to win. It's a scenario where Dan has more to gain and less to lose. Do you feel any more pressure on your performance at Bellator 138 now as opposed to your fight with James? Because everybody's sort of expecting you to really go through this guy.
No, because that's every one of my fights. Every one of my fights going there. Even if they're a bigger name than me, they have you know, most of the guys that I fight have more to gain. So it is kind of one of those deals where when they come out and fight me, they're like, yeah, and I really doesn't matter if the guys are higher ranked than me, if they had a better record. it doesn't matter. It seems like every time I'm put in the same position where they have more to gain and I have a lot to lose. So it doesn't really matter. I don't even look at it that way anymore. I kind of erase that out of my mind and just think, hey, it's a fight, and this is a fighter, and it's a heavyweight fighter, so anything can happen. So I just got to train hard and go out there and stick to the game plan.
Sure. So you're obviously fighting Dan Charles, Bellator 138. Bellator 138 is a pretty impressive card. You got Ken Shamrock taking on Kimbo Slice as the main event. Another former, wrestler / MMA fighter. Were you surprised when you heard about this matchup? And what are your thoughts on Kimbo being in Bellator?
I like it, man. I like those guys. I like Kimbo a lot. I mean, I'm good friends with him, so and he's an ATT guy. So when I found out he was on the card, I was like, yeah, that's awesome. But then, it's one of those fights that at first, when people hear about it, they're like, what? Kimbo's fighting Shamrock? Shamrock's fighting? And then afterwards you say, okay, who's going to win? And then you get this whole discussion. Okay, well, if Kimbo hits him, well, Shamrock takes him down. And then you have this huge discussion as to what's going to happen. So it's a very interesting fight. I think that it's one of those interesting fights, and I think a lot of people are going to watch it just because they're going to have the respect for Ken just being in the business so long, and then to see what Kimbo can do, because he took that little time away and did his boxing and some of the other things that he was doing. So they want to see what's going to happen. Nobody knows. I think it's going to be very interesting. I think a lot of people are going to tune in just to see the craziness.
Oh, absolutely. Let me ask you something, because we were watching a video where Kimbo was talking about how he's been doing a lot of MMA training, I think, over the last few years, even though he hasn't been competing at it. And you said, obviously, he is an ATT guy, you train ATT. Is there something we don't know about Kimbo? Is he coming in with like a completely new arsenal that we don't know about because he's been training for the last few years?
I would say, I haven't seen him train lately because I own ATT up in Denver, so I did most of my training camp up in Denver. I know he popped into Coconut Creek quite a bit, so I don't know what they've been working on. I know he's been working on a lot of what Ken does, especially like knee bars and heel hooks and a lot of leg defense. So I know if he goes out on the ground, they can probably work on a ton of stuff there. But outside of that, I think he should just swing away. So I think that Kimbo is still going to be the Kimbo that everybody loves and knows, someone that's going to throw some heavy punches and try to catch him on his chin.
No, absolutely. Now, we have to ask you this question, Bobby, because a lot of fans are wondering this. Obviously, you and Kimbo are at the same training camp, but we have Dan Lambert on the show, and, he spoke about teammates fighting each other. It would be a huge fight that fans would want to see. Do you see yourself at any point in your Bellator career possibly matching up with Kimbo? Because obviously you guys are friends, but at the same time, it would be a very, very interesting matchup that would get a lot of eyeballs.
Yeah, business is business, and he understands it. He gets it also. And how I look at it, some people would never do it. For me, I'm a little different. At the end of the day, we're all here out to try to feed our families. And if that's a good fight and that's a fight that they want, I'm up for it. It's going to be one of those fights that I'm going to shake his hand before and I'll shake his hand afterwards. But I really don't see it happening until I tell you the truth. But you never know. You never know what's going to happen next. It depends on I guess there's a lot of different factors. But you never know. Never know. I'm willing. I'll pretty much do anything that they need me to do right now. So
you're the kind of employee that every boss dreams of, Bobby. Easygoing. You fought twice in 2014. Now this will be your first fight for 2015. Just wondering, what are your goals in MMA? You're 38 years old. Do you want to take on the Bellator heavyweight champ soon, or are you sort of looking to do MMA and pro wrestling sort of together, and this being more sort of part time?
No, I'm gonna still do it together, but I'm still shooting for that title. Right now, I think I'm in a really good position to do it. And I think within the next few fights, I think we should be knocking on the door of whoever has it, saying, hey, it's time for that shot. I think every fight that I have moving forward is going to be a telltale sign as whether or not they're going to give me that shot. I think, Thompson, of course, he has a little winning streak going, so I think it would have been a better fight for me to just smash him. To look, but then, like you said, Dan Charles up and coming. They know the kid's tough, got a good record. Every fight that I have leading up, this year is super important. I'm not going to be a journeyman fighter. I can see me well into 40s, trying to pick fights with guys and everything like that. I'm not doing it. I'm doing a hard run right now, going for the title, and hopefully I can get the title out of all this.
Absolutely. Now, we really appreciate the time, Bobby. We've got a couple of fan questions before we wrap up. So we picked a couple and we'll quickly ask them. The first one comes from username Real Deal O'Neill. He goes, Bobby, I'm a big fan of you both in MMA and pro wrestling. Just wondering, what are your thoughts on WWE next? There's a lot of great guys having a run there, such as Samoa Joe and Kevin Steen.
Oh, I like it. I like what they're doing down there. I really like what they're doing. I think that show is almost becoming more popular than the main show, which if that happens, they're going to. No, I was saying that I think it's great. I think what they're doing down there is great. They're building some guys up so that those guys can learn how to be superstars and do some big things. And when they do come up to the main roster, they're ready because they do get a little bit of superstar status when they're there. So they have a TV channel, everything like that. The only thing that I wish that they would do is that there's a lot of guys out right now that they really can use to kind of like mix into their program that I think would give those guys even bigger boosts. You have guys like Sheldon Benjamin, you have Chris Masters, Carlito, you have John Morrison, you have a lot of really, really good guys out there that they're like, no, we're not going to touch those guys because we really want to develop these younger guys. I understand that. But I think Helm said it the best. It's like, you can't go to a professional game and not have some of the professionals out there. And I think what they have going on right now, they have some really good names. I think they should just kind of mix it up a little bit more. And then another thing is I think they should just use some of the guys that are out there right now. Instead of these guys traveling around the world in independent promotions all over the place, you've already built these guys up. Might as well use them to boost your guys and then give them kind of a little retirement out of the deal. So
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's pretty much the reason why people love NXT. This question comes from Walls of Dan. Bobby, what are your thoughts on the rumors that TNA will be cancelled from Destination America? Have you heard anything else about this?
Man, in my contract it says nothing about negotiating deals with any network, so I try to stay out of that part of it. I know what Dixie does, and Dixie's good at kind of trying to find the right path for where she needs to have this show. I mean, they've been around for 12 years. I don't think they're going to go anywhere right now. Whether it's Destination America, Spike, or wherever it is, I'm sure they're going to be able to reach an agreement, reach a deal where they're going to have a home and they're going to be there for a long time. If they leave Destination America, I think it'll be a shame because the amount of talent that we have on that show. I mean, it's for the people that watch TNA, they know the kind of talent. I mean, there's some really big names here. You got the Hardy Boys, you got Kurt Angle, myself, MVP. There's a lot of really high, Bobby Roode, Eric Young. There's a lot of really, really good Kennedy over there. I mean, there's so many guys over there that it'd be. If they do die, there's going to be another promotion somewhere that's just ready to scoop up all these guys and already have a main level roster right after that. So I don't see it happening. It'd be ridiculous for them to part ways. If anybody leaves, it's going to be TNA leaving to go somewhere else.
Oh, absolutely, and a great product like you mentioned. Now, we're going to wrap up the interview with a thing we call the tap-out round, Bobby. It's basically like word association. We throw questions at you. You answer with the first thing that comes to mind, okay? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Who's your favorite MMA fighter to watch?
Damn, tough question off the bat. Let's go with I'm going to throw two. I get two, right?
Yeah.
I like I think Luke Rockhold is really doing some big things, and doggone it, I'm gonna throw a handful. I really like Conor McGregor, but I like Jose Aldo as a fighter. But I think that's gonna be an amazing fight. I think Ronda Rousey's at the top of the friggin' business, as is, and then Verdum and Kane. That's gonna be another incredible fight. So I mean, I have so many. There's 7 names for you.
Yeah, clearly I'm an MMA fan. Vince versus Dixie, what's the biggest difference between working with them?
I think Dixie's more of like she let's see. I think Vince is more of a businessman and Dixie's more of like a family person. Dixie kind of stays away from the business aspect and lets the people run the company, but at the same time, Dixie's so big on the family, man. I have no problem bringing my kids there, bringing them backstage, meeting the guys and everything like that. She wants to be more of a family environment, whereas Vince, it's business. It's really business in WWE. I mean, both of them have their great qualities, but I think that's the big difference between the two.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of WWE, would you ever consider going back for one last run when it's all said and done?
Sure.
Now, describe working with Donald Trump in one sentence, Bobby.
Amazing.
What's Bobby Lashley's favorite go-to submission when he's rolling around?
I can't say that, man, because in this guy's got to work some defense on it. I like, let me think of something. Let me think of something now. I'm going to go with the knee bar.
There you go. That's some high-level stuff. What's one pro wrestling move? One of the last questions, Bobby. What's one pro wrestling move that you think would work well in an MMA fight?
The power bomb.
Well, Rampage Jackson did it, so you're not wrong.
Now, working a match with Vince McMahon, how difficult was it? Because we hear it was very hard.
No, I think it's very easy because he gets it more than other people. I mean, because a lot of times you deal with him, you don't go after him first, he goes after you. So he's going to show you what kind of pace that he wants. He's going to show you how stiff it's going to be and how hard it's going to be. So after that, you just got to reciprocate. You got to give it back the same way he gives it to you. So I think it's very simple. It's very simple working with him. And he told me, too, it's like, you know what, you're going to have your time. And I was like, okay, well, my time comes. My time's going to come.
Well, it sounds like your time is now. Finally, the last question, Bobby. What is the official prediction? How do you plan on beating Dan Charles at Bellator 138?
I think it'd be second round ground and pound.
There you go, guys. Well, you can follow Bobby on Twitter at FightBobby and check out his fight with Dan Charles at Bellator 138, June 19th, of course, here in Australia. It's going to be June 20th because of the time difference. Bobby, we want to thank you so much for taking the time and doing the show. We really appreciate it. Good luck in the fight.
Anytime, every time, man. Appreciate you.
Hey, this is Alistair Overeem, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
Alright guys, you'll know our next guest from his graceful moves in a parody video for Sears Chandelier. He is taking on English sensation John Hathaway at UFC 189, straight out of Iceland via Las Vegas. We have Gunnar Nelson on Submission Radio. Gunnar, welcome to the show. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that intro, us mentioning your fantastic moves in the Chandelier parody video. What was the inspiration to make the video? It seems really random of you and your team to do.
It was a video made for a year party in our club. It was never meant to go online.
Really? So it was accidental that we all saw it?
Well, I don't know why they put it online or how it came about that it went online, but we were not aware of it. It was only supposed to be shown at the year party, but you know, it's all good. It's a funny thing, you know.
Well, the question that comes to mind, Gunnar, is what other videos were created that weren't shown? Did you guys create a bunch of other videos at the end of the year in the past years that we just never got to look at?
Yeah, there's been a lot of weird videos, all right. I'm lucky that this one got out. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I feel like you got off easy just that it was Sears Chandelier. Now, before we talk about current things, Gunnar, we want to talk a little bit about your past. You're obviously known for your amazing ground game and your karate style, but we're curious about how the two came together, because when you were 16, you had so much success in karate that you were named Iceland's most promising up-and-coming karate talent of the year. However, at age 17, you gave up karate to train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and grappling. Why the big change, and why stop doing something that you were already so good at to start something that you had no experience in?
I always knew I wanted to do something that was kind of more real, you know. Karate, there's kind of the way the competitions were back home, and the ones that I did were, it was not full contact. There was no submissions or nothing like that. So when I kind of came across MMA, I knew that was what I wanted to do, because that was like you could do everything, you know, and it was real. It was very real. So I started grappling with my friend, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was getting submitted like left and right, so I knew I needed to work on that. That was like I could move on the feet and I could punch and kick, but I was terrible on the ground. So I put my emphasis on that for a few years, and it was badly needed.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that you say that, Gunnar, because you know you're a very, very good submission artist. And it's come very naturally to you. When you started doing grappling, did you find that it was in your genetic makeup that, you know, you picked it up quickly and it was something that you were good at?
Yeah, I did pick it up quick, and I just, like, I fell in love with it, you know. I really enjoy grappling, and it's just the a lot of the movement came very naturally, and like I was able to kind of create my own thing, and that's what I love about this sport as well, because it's so open, because you can do anything. That you're able to create your own kind of style and your own movements. So it was like that on the ground, definitely, and it's like that in MMA as well.
Mm. Now, Gunnar, we last saw you in the octagon when you lost a close decision to Rick Story in October of last year. By the time you fight John Hathaway at UFC 189 in July, it'll be 9 months. Why the long break in between fights?
Well, I recently had a kid, and I've been wanting to take a break for a while. I had like 3 fights after he was born, so I was meant to take a break before the Stockholm card, but then that presented itself, and of course, like headlining this card in Stockholm, I jumped on it. So, but then after that, I took a break, and I was able to spend some more time with my boy and stuff like that. So that's the main reason, really.
Now, Gunnar, obviously you were undefeated before going into that fight. Just wondering, having your first official loss on the record, a lot of fighters take that very, very difficult. It goes to their heart. A lot of them find a tough time to sort of get over it. What was that experience like for you? Because a lot of the fighters that we've spoken to, it's not an easy one for them.
Yeah, it's never easy to lose. I've lost before in other sports, and like I know what it is to lose, and you just have to deal with it and move on. And maybe what I took from it is, if I want to reach my dreams, I need to focus better. That's something that maybe I could have been training better for the last 2 years, and this kind of woke me up.
When you say training better, what do you mean? Because sometimes you hear guys say, "Oh, I clean up my diet," or "I train harder and smarter." We always sort of wonder, like, what would it have been that you weren't doing before that you're doing now? What's something that you've changed?
It's not too much. Like it's more how I go into training and how interested I am in it. Like I guess I kind of. Sometimes you're doing something, right, and for a while you go through a period where you just kind of lose interest, or you're not like fully, I don't know, your mind is not fully there for a while, and it has been for a while for me, and although I've been like winning most of my fights and stuff, but I don't feel like I've been doing it the way I should be doing. I haven't been putting all the effort in, and like I haven't been, just fully there when I'm training, and you just sometimes you lose interest. I don't know why exactly, but like shortly after my fight with Rick Story, I started really dreaming again, and feeling that I had when I was starting, and so I'm very excited for times to come now. I feel like I've got that fire that was always there, that kind of left for a little bit. It's there again, It's a good feeling.
Absolutely.
Like,
and sorry, continue. I'm gonna.
No, it's just that you've got a clear path now, and you're very happy to be on it.
Yeah, certainly. And speaking of that path, obviously the welterweight division is just a huge, it's a big mix-up. Since GSP left, there's a lot of new opportunities, a lot of pathways to the title. Is that one of the reasons you're excited as well? Because obviously you'll be fighting at UFC 189 when the title is going to be up for the taking. Has that sort of excited you as well, knowing that the welterweight division has become a bit easier to get up there and, challenge for the title?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the division is wide open. There's a lot of good guys. There's a lot of like top guys that are all fighting for that position. But it's wide open at the moment. Like since George left, obviously. But I'm very excited for the division I'm in. I think there's a lot of tough guys, a lot of different martial artists, and I think it's going to be a good couple of years.
One of those guys is John Hathaway. You'll be fighting him at one of the biggest cards of the year, UFC 189. Now, his style is primarily wrestling. Given your grappling background and accomplishments, do you think you hold up most of the advantages in this fight?
Yeah, I do. I'm very confident going into this fight, and I think he's a strong guy. He's a crafty. He's tough everywhere, you know. And his wrestling is probably his main thing. We'll see what he wants to do. You know, I'm just gonna go in there and do what I do best. Just feel it out. You know, that's always been. It's always been the best thing for me when I go in there and have no no strict game plans or whatever. Just play and feel it out. You know, just react.
Yeah, well, even though you've had a long layoff, his layoff has been significantly longer. John hasn't fought since his TKO loss to Dong Hyun Kim in March of 2014, and will be coming in on a 16-month layoff. You know, people would usually normally be talking about ring rust for a guy like yourself being out 9 months, but in this case, John's may be far worse. Do you think this will play at all a factor in this fight?
I've been away before, and it didn't really affect me. I think if you've had a certain amount of fights, it's almost become a second nature. To be honest, it's more like well for me, from my experience, it's where your head is at, and like if you want to do this, if you're feeling inspired, you know, if you're ready, you know.
Well, speaking of inspiration, John actually defeated Tom Egan in 2009 via stoppage. Apart from being the UFC's first ever Irish fighter, Tom is, of course, yours and Conor McGregor's training partner and was featured heavily in the UFC 189 Embeddeds. You don't seem like the type of guy who pursues revenge, but will the victory over John partially be a way of avenging Tom?
Yeah, I mean, me and Tom were good friends. He's actually here training with us now, and I remember that fight clearly. And yeah, there's no revenge, but I'm sure Tom will be happy.
Now, you're currently, like you mentioned, visiting your other training partner, a friend, Conor McGregor, in Las Vegas. Conor's actually posted a photo of you guys standing outside holding some hot whiskey. What's the go? Did you pop the cap? Did you have your own rendition of The Hangover? Did you, Gunnar?
It was just a regular whiskey, but we make sometimes at night hot whiskey. It's just like a tea, but with a bit of whiskey in it and honey. It's lovely.
And I'm just curious because obviously Conor McGregor is pretty close to fighting. He's still drinking that. He's okay to drink that in the middle of training camp.
Yeah, it's just 1 cup of like tiny bit of whiskey. It's just a tea, you know, with a tiny bit of whiskey. It sets you in the right mind for going to bed, really.
Sure.
You're talking to a couple of Australians here, mate. You know, we're all over the whiskey and everything. Now, the Mac Mansion, we have to ask about this because when me and Casper think about a nice house, it's always the bathroom situation that sets the scene for us. How many bathrooms are there in the McMansion?
We'll accept no less than 50, Gunnar.
I think there's honestly there's probably about 15, yeah.
15. Wow. Realistically, that's a ton of bathrooms.
There is like a huge bathroom in every room, and there is about definitely 10 rooms or something. And then there's like bathrooms here and there, just, you know, 1 outside or 2 outside, just here and there in the corridor. And you're not gonna piss yourself.
Yeah, you're going to get lost. And clearly, you've done your research. You've scoped out the perimeter of this place. As far as what you're going to be doing there, you'll be helping Conor prepare for his fight on the same card against Jose Aldo. What specifically will you guys be working on?
We always work on everything, you know. Everybody has their little ideas of like how it's going to play out, and Conor has his little shots or little things that he's working on, but overall, we're just working everything. You just keep on building up your overall game, you know. And we just last night we worked on some grappling against the fence. We did 5-5s and then some other technical work. You know, you're always working everything, and then in your head you're working your specific kind of movements or energies or ideas and techniques, you know.
Yeah, well, I'm happy that you brought that up, Gunnar, because, you know, Conor's ground game is something that's always a topic of discussion. There are people that often talk about how good it must be because he trains with yourself and Pendrit, and rumors are that he gives black belts hell. Are there then there's the people and fans that believe that we haven't seen much of his ground game in the UFC, and it's hard to say. Obviously, you are one of the top guys with the grappling, in terms of grappling in the welterweight division. Can you squash this for us? Can you clarify and set the record straight? How good is Conor's ground game?
Oh, he's very good on the ground, and he's even better when it's grappling for MMA, because that's a lot of difference. You know, grappling or jiu-jitsu is not the same as wrestling and grappling in MMA, and he's really good there, and he's got good submissions, and he's very fast, and he can move. And can move in most directions, you know. So, and he's getting better every single day. So, yeah, I'm sure he'll. If you forget yourself, if a good black belt forgets himself for a second, he's on you, and he's probably going to submit you.
We've had John Kavanagh on the show before. I've been watching what he's saying. Realistically, do you think it's possible for him to submit Jose Aldo when they fight? Because I believe a few people have said that.
Oh, 100% he can.
Now, considering that you're fighting on one of the biggest cards of the year and your teammate is headlining for a title, how big of a deal will it be if both of you guys walk away with a win that night?
It'll be huge. You know, we've been on the same cards before, and when we all get a win, it's something else. You know, that it's just such a good feeling to have your team do well like this. You know, this is like the biggest card of the year, and then Conor is fighting for the title, and I'm fighting John Hathaway. It is a dream come true for us to be fighting like this, fighting on the same card at the highest level of the game, and getting the win would mean everything.
I almost feel like it's a rare thing. Like in MMA, there's so many MMA fighters all around the world. You know, not obviously most of them are not in the UFC. The fact that you guys are not only friends and sparring partners, but you know, both elite, both fight on the same card, both friends. You know, Conor is notorious for his personality. However, you're more of a stoic guy. Or you're more known for being stoic. If you guys win, is it safe to say that SBG Straight Plus Gym is going to take over Las Vegas that night?
I'm sure that Conor is going to have a pretty sick after party, I'd say, and it'll be hungover.
Now, let's talk about you again, Gunnar. You're looked at as one of the top prospects in the welterweight division. If you beat John, how many times will you be looking to fight in 2015? And what are your realistic goals in terms of fighting for 2015?
Like I said before, you know, I realized that if I don't just want to dream and I want to make my dreams come true, I have to pick it up now and put everything into this and you know, stop flapping around. You know, just so I think I definitely have at least one or two more fights this year, and I think I'm only three fights away from the title. As you said before, this division is very open, so it all depends on the manner of your victories, but I feel like I'm very, very close.
Now, Gunnar, before we do something that we call the Submission Radio Tap-Out Round, where we fire off a bunch of fun questions, we're just going to ask 3 fan questions. We told everybody that you were coming on the show, and they all sent in their fan questions. The first one comes from Gats. His question is, you have very calm, methodical, mental approach to fighting. Is it something you have naturally or something you cultivated over your career?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I've gotten this question before. I think it's maybe a little bit of just me, just the way I am, or the way I think, or maybe just my experiences in life or something. I'm not sure, to be honest. Well, I don't really sit down in a yoga position and meditate. You know, I'm not like that. You know, it's but I do meditate, I guess, in sense of you know, you picture things and you go over whatever happened and what you thought of it and what you think is right, and I have a very strong, like, I don't let my feelings get in the way of my beliefs. My beliefs are number one, you know, and it doesn't matter what I feel that second necessarily. You know, sometimes it's not right. Sometimes you're caught up in some nasty feelings or whatever. You're hurt, your pride is hurt, Something is off. You're not feeling right, but you cannot lose your beliefs, because that's then you're on your way down.
Man, that's some inspirational stuff there, Gunnar. That's some really inspirational stuff. Now, next fan cat question comes from Bulletproof ACC. He goes, "It seems as though your karate stance influenced Conor, and he used that stance ever since you guys started training together. Is it something that you ever discussed with Conor, and do you think he may have adopted it from your style?"
Yeah, like we've been training together for a long time, and he comes over to Iceland to train a lot. So he used to be like a bit more of a boxer, but then we started working kicks and that kind of in and out style, and being a bit more on the toes. And yeah, he adopts whatever suits him and whatever he can make work. So you might have gotten some of that from me. I'm not gonna. You'll have to ask him, but. We definitely learn a lot from each other. That's for sure.
Sure. Final fan question is from Oz101. Oz101 wants to know, what's your usual walk-around weight, Gunnar, and what's your octagon weight? And he says, I'm asking because you seem like one of the smaller welterweights, and would you ever go down to lightweight?
Yeah, I've gotten this question a lot. I walk around a lot, 82 kilos, maybe if it's like mid-Christmas, I'd go up to 84. The most. That's probably the heaviest I've ever seen on the scales, to be honest.
Wow.
But I'm like 82 kilos. That's my walk around weight. And then when I go into the fight, I think I'm like 80 kilos.
Oh wow.
So you wouldn't ever consider going down to lightweight, Gunnar?
No.
Okay, now we're going to wrap this up with something that Casper just... Sorry, go on, mate.
I think Conor would probably come up, so that will take all the doubts away from the fans.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Go down, but I like to eat and be. I've never been. I'm comfortable being the smaller guy. To be honest, it's never played a big part with me. I've always been good fighting bigger guys, and yeah, it's fine. It's part of martial arts.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, recently we've seen a lot of smaller guys in weight divisions actually do better moving up. So definitely not the best way for everybody to go. Now, we're going to finish this thing up with a submission radio tap out round, Gunnar. Just a bunch of fun questions like word association in a lot of ways. We ask you to answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're a very relaxed guy. What does it take to get Gunnar Nelson excited?
In a good way or a bad way?
Let's go both. Good way and bad way.
In a bad way, it's definitely like bad traffic and electronics that don't work. Really, yeah.
Do you ever lose your cool? Because we're horribly angry drivers. Like, you just seem so calm all the time. Do you ever just snap and like lose your cool in the middle of a traffic jam?
Yeah, I might. It has to be bad. I might. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm not the saint that everybody thinks I am. At least I didn't used to be. Anyway, I'm calming down. Yeah, and in a good way, it's always something physical. Go out and do something exciting. Maybe something that has to do with adrenaline flow a little bit. That really gets me going.
I get excited for pizza. So I think we're two different people. What's something that people don't know about Gunnar Nelson?
I have no idea.
Even Gunnar Nelson doesn't know himself.
Yeah.
Gunnar, you've got your headphones on a lot of pictures on Twitter. What are you blasting through those headphones? What are your top 3 bands right now that you like listening to?
I've been listening to a lot of Icelandic reggae these days. Song called Gaia, Amapadama. It's a good one. King Kunta, you know that song?
No, never heard of it.
It's a hip hop song. It's good.
Okay.
There's a few good ones there, yeah. And then just a lot of oldies. I like oldies, like 60s and stuff.
Yeah, actually, sorry, King Conta, no, you're right. Sorry, I had Channel V on in the background the other day, and it did come on. One of the last few questions, Gunnar, before we let you go. Do you watch much TV, and if so, what's your favorite show?
Yeah, I think maybe Game of Thrones, but lately we've been watching Spartacus. Me and Pendred, we got in on Spartacus over in Mexico. It's It's really something. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't watched it yet, actually.
It's sensational. All right.
This question comes from a fan. His name is Drew. He goes, since 9 of your wins are by submission and 6 of those are by choke, which choke submission is your favorite?
You look like you were choking just saying that.
Yeah.
Are you like one of those evil Jedis?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Gunnar. So which one is your favorite?
I'm a big favor of the Mataleon, the rear naked choke. It's it's such a solid choke from a solid position.
Do you think karate is underrated in modern MMA?
I think it's starting to get more and more credit now. People are starting to realize the effects of karate and a lot of the movements. I think, to be honest, it all depends on how you train it, you know. And now people are starting to take karate into MMA and train it the way they train MMA, and then it's unbelievably effective, you know. Whereas, like, a lot of times the way people train karate, it's not alive. It's not. There's no contact. You don't get used to using your techniques in the right like energy, you know. So you can train a great sport for years and years, and still you will never be able to do it because you never spar, or you never train against somebody that's really trying and in the right environment, you know. So it all depends on how you train. And
Sure.
karate is very effective.
Second last question. Gunnar Nelson is, of course, the multi-platinum singer and musician. Have you ever made a booking somewhere and been mistaken for him, or had the staff expect the singer to arrive as opposed to the UFC fighter?
Yeah, I know of the guy, and a few times that I've like people send me pictures of him, and like, that's a good picture of you. But yeah, no, that's about it. Like, to be honest, I haven't even heard the song by him. I need to check it out though. Is he good?
We have no idea. I honestly, I just googled him the other day. I have no idea. I know he's a beautiful man. I'm not going to take that away from him, but I don't know what his singing's like.
Maybe he's a great fighter as well. Who knows? Now, finally, we want the official prediction, Gunnar. How do you plan on beating John Hathaway at UFC 189?
I think it's gonna be a submission.
Submission. There you go. Something new, something exciting from Gunnar Nelson. Guys, don't forget to follow Gunnar on his Twitter, which of course is at Gunny Nelson, Gunni Nelson. Gunnar, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and don't forget, he's fighting John Hathaway at UFC 189.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.
Hey, this is the Ultimate Fighter 17 winner, Kelvin Gastelum. You're listening to Submission Radio.
Our next guest is one of the top heavyweights in the world. He's a former K1 champion, one of the hardest hitters in the history of MMA. He's currently one of the top heavyweights in the UFC. Mark Hunt, welcome back to Submission Radio.
Hey guys, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
It's always great when you come on the show. It's good to have you back. Now, fans are excited about this new book you've been writing. This kind of, came out of nowhere. How close is it to coming out, and how did this whole thing come together?
Well, it didn't come out of nowhere, and I was Headshot approached me a while ago, about, I think it was like 5 months ago, I think it was now, and Vanessa asked me about doing the book, and I think I said about 4 or 5 times to get no to doing one. But I think the key that got me to do the book was, she said if I could help someone with the story, even if it's one person, then it's good enough to share the story. So I looked along that lines and thought, yeah, that's a great idea. So I'm always looking to try to help others, especially with faith or whatever it is. So they might be in a similar situation that I've been in many times. So, I thought I'd do a book. So, it's out in September. And it's good news. The Ghostwriter Ben, we're just finishing up the book now. It should be ready by September.
Now, when we spoke to Chris Lieben about him writing his book, he said it was difficult having to relive some of the more difficult parts of his life when he was writing his book. Did you find that when you were putting your book together, Mark?
Yeah, totally. It took me back to places that I was uncomfortable with, and it goes to show how far I've come, especially not me, myself, but how far I've been saved as a person by God. It's kind of crazy when I sit back and think about the life that I've come to become one of the top end athletes in the world as a fighter. And I think God didn't make no mistake with what I did for a living. So Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a really, really storied career, and not only that, but it's quite a long career too, spanning, in theory, different sports. You got kickboxing, you got MMA. Any crazy stories you can share with us from the book, just as a little tease of what we can expect when it comes out?
Well, I've had a pretty checkered past, I mean, as a kid, a troubled kid and all, but I can share one story with you. And I was, my dad, he was in a hospital. My mom had like 7 strokes at the time, and she had about 11 now, I think. But she was in a wheelchair, and my dad was dying of cancer. He was like the Cadbury man, he had a really white hair, but he was all like brown and like yellow his face, and so he was dying, and we were I walked my mother to see in the hospital, and I walked there to see my dad, and it was like a crazy ass smell in the room. It was like ashes, and then as I faced my mom, I faced my old man looking at him. The corner of my eye, I saw this really crazy, this huge, about 20 feet tall. I don't know what it was. I didn't look at it. It was, my peripheral vision. So I saw this thing on the side of it, and my mind goes, "What the hell is that thing?" And it was huge, like 20 feet tall. And it was hooded, and it was holding something. And I thought, the thing I got, that feeling that I got from that thing, I was like, "Wow, that thing's crazy, man." And I think that thing there is certainly here to click this guy right here in front of me. And, I'll never forget that. I think I've seen that thing about 3 or 4 times in my life. So when I said to myself, that thing's evil, it's bad, it's not good. And if I looked at it, I'll be dead, too. Just like this guy's going to be dead.
Wow.
And that's just one of the stories. That's not a story. That's just real. Anyway.
So so when you say this thing, like, are we talking like the Grim Reaper?
Actually, I think it was a Grim Reaper. I think it was the devil.
Wow.
It was 20 feet tall, and I thought my mind goes, and I got tingles like I got tingles telling you now. I was like, don't look at that thing. That thing will kill you. And I felt like the power emanating from that thing is just ridiculous. If it opened its mouth, the whole place is going to fall over. It was just, like I said, I've seen that thing 4 times, so I thought to myself, if that thing's real, then God must be real. So that's something, I don't like seeing that thing, but, I'm lucky I haven't seen it lately, but it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And your mum saw it as well, did you say?
No, my mum she was in a wheelchair. She had 7 strokes at the time.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
she couldn't, she had 7 strokes, and I'm sitting there looking at my old man. It was just a crazy feeling at that time in the hospital. It was like, anyway, that's one of the stories in there. So, yeah, get the book. It's out in September. It's a great read. Yeah.
Now, Mark, let's switch topics for a second. Obviously, your last fight was here in Adelaide. Fans loved seeing you over there. You got a bit of damage to the face after the fight. It was all over the news, obviously. Just wondering, and the fans want to know as well, how's the face feeling? Is Mark Hunt back to his pretty self?
Well, I'm back to modelling, of course. I'm always covering around me at the day. I said, when you back to face modelling? It wasn't a good night in the office. I made a couple of mistakes that night, and I wasted a whole camp. I wasted my whole camp, and I can't apologise enough to my team and all the guys who work there. Because I shouldn't even have to cut weight for these things. And the problem is I had a bad weight cut, and I didn't carve up tonight, And if all those fighters listening, don't ever drink a lot of drinks after weighing in, because I never had any past or anything like before, so I was running on, minus E. But I didn't really realise that until I actually had the first 30 seconds of fighting with Stipe, and then I realised, wow, you've got nothing. And then the rest of the fight ended up me getting a hiding, so that's what happened.
Were you
So,
okay?
yeah, you gotta remember, that's my 4th weight cut ever.
Yeah.
I normally sit around close to 140 on my off time, so, right now I'm trying to bring my fat ass back to 110, 115, so I can actually compete with these guys. That wasn't a good night in the office, and that wasn't even a fight. That was just me getting a hiding, and I don't want to do that ever again. Otherwise, why am I even competing? I might as well be hanging up. I do apologize. I can't apologize enough to my team, for wasting all that time. There was like 12 weeks of wasting time. And what I mean by that, because I went to the fight, overweight. I did feel like I was doing okay in the rounds. I was doing 5-minute rounds in sparring with 3 guys, but the last bit of it, the fine tuning didn't work out because I didn't have any carbs the night before. So troubled waters for the fight. So 5 rounds of getting a beat down is not really good.
So just to clarify, so you didn't have any carbohydrates before the fight, correct? Like the day after the
Well, I
weigh-in?
thought I did. I had after cutting the weight, I was drinking a lot of drinks, and my body was my mom, I said, no, well, you're not hungry, so you must be content.
Mm.
And, my trainer did say, Mark, have some parts if we get a bed, blah, blah, blah. But, not feeling hungry, and I was fine. And, I made a freaking silly mistake, and that's what happened. So, but my features, I'm all good. My skeletal frame's fine. A lot of people are saying, well, I think it's time to hang it up. Well, I don't think it's the same thing because, I love what I do, and that was just a bad error I made. And you can't really make these errors, especially fighting the top end, because they'll fix you up, just like I got fixed up.
Yeah, for sure, Mark. And obviously you're speaking about how disappointed you were with the whole thing, the camp being wasted and stuff like that. Was the fact that a lot of people thought that if you won the fight, you were going to get a title shot here in Melbourne at UFC 193, and that was gone. Was that one of the biggest disappointments of the night for you as well, knowing that you won't be headlining that card?
Well, no, the fact that I've never lost back at home, I never lost a fight, I wanted to keep that record standing, but I've never lost a rematch either. That's another thing I want to keep standing, but it wasn't the fact that I didn't get a title shot that I wasted everyone's time with that, by making a couple little errors, and the guys are too good at the top end to try and make those errors. And, I thought I could hang in the fight, even though I was getting beaten down. I thought, look, man, I just, get him a good couple of shots, but then it just got worse and worse, and then, the hole got bigger and bigger, and I was like, man, anyway, that's what, it was just not good for everyone to watch, especially not actually being a real fight, it was like one side is beating all the way through, so.
Well,
people was feeling pity for me. I didn't feel pity for me. I feel really blessed as a fighter to be competing at the top end. They're saying they feel sorry for me. Well, they feel sorry for me because I love what I'm doing. I might not love that night, but like I said, I'm not a 9-to-5 person, and so I always feel blessed to still be competing with the top guys at my age. So
if you're not a 9-to-5 person and you're not obviously going back to modeling, then it sounds like you're staying in the cage, which is good. Having said that.
Modeling's not 9-to-5, mate. Modeling, you can go anytime you want, right?
Well, that's true. We'll see Mark on GQ magazine next month with a lot of names tied up in the heavyweight division, Mark, at the moment. There's a few guys that stand out as potential opponents. Guys like Travis Brown, the winner of Frank Mir versus Todd Duffy. But the other man who was yet to find an opponent for himself is Alistair Overeem. Now, you're a fan of avenging losses, and you've never lost a rematch. Would you be interested in a rematch of the Reem, and how would you see the fight playing out between you guys?
Look, man, I'll rematch anyone. I still, like I said, I feel I'm the best fighter in the world. Everyone goes through a couple of losses, but I'll rematch anyone, and I'll fight with anybody anytime. It just depends on, what's happening with how UFC see me in the roster, So we'll see how it goes and who it is, for the next fight. So, like I said, I will dance with anybody. I like doing the tango and the waltz especially.
Wonderful. And obviously, is it still a goal of yours to get onto the Melbourne card, Mark?
Of course, I love the fight on the Melbourne card. Like I said, I didn't really mind. I didn't deserve the headliner because I got beaten down and stuff. But I feel I should be on the card somewhere, and I'll be looking to come back. Stronger than ever. Hopefully, I'll be getting ready to battle. Hopefully they put me on that card or, somewhere else.
Now, every time you come on, Mark, we like to discuss your clothing line, Juggernaut. It's one of the favorite clothing lines in MMA. Tell us, what's the process behind the designs? Are a lot of them chosen by you, and how does it work? And also, let me also add, it's pretty damn cold in here in winter. What are a couple of pieces of clothing you could recommend for us, Mark?
Well, we just got a whole new line of clothing, of jackets and everything. The clothing brand Juggernaut, Juggernaut was my first fight name ever back in when I had my first fight, 89 or something. And I had tried the branding like every other fight. I thought I'd do my own. Like I tried it 4 or 5 times, 4 times I got ripped off. But I'm not a quitter. So the name speaks for itself. It's unstoppable. So the 5th time I've done it, it's worked. I've got a great partner who designed everything, Dustin, and we're just trying to move into everything, like all sorts of different clothing. Martial arts gear. So you can purchase the gear online. www.jugmt.com, and we just got a whole new range of jackets. I was just having a look at the designs and the quality and should be up on the website pretty soon. So I'm excited about that.
Well, there you guys go. Mark Hunt, he's a super busy guy. There's a book coming out. There's a clothing line, and we're excited to see who he fights at UFC Melbourne. Guys, you can check out Mark's clothing line, like he mentioned, at www.gugnt.com, and follow Mark on Twitter at Mark Hunt 1974. A lot of interesting tweets formulated by the general himself. Mark, thank you very much for coming on to Submission Radio.
Hey, thanks very much for having me, Submission Radio, and talk to you soon.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Demetrius Johnson, the UFC flyweight champion of the world, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, joining the conversation is one of the most respected newsmen in combat sports, revolutionizing pro wrestling news with his newsletter, The Wrestling Observer, and also doing great work for MMA fighting. It's our pleasure to welcome Dave Meltzer to Submission Radio.
Hey, how you doing? It's great to be here.
Doing great, Dave, and thank you for taking some time out. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Now, just want to speak to you about a few hot topics happening in MMA and pro wrestling. The first one, and this is one that a lot of people are talking about, and we'd love to get your insight and thoughts on, is this whole Jose Aldo drug testing situation. From what we know, Nevada sent someone over to do a test. The Brazilian Commission didn't know about it. He didn't have an appropriate visa. Apparently, they wanted to deport him. It's all a huge mess. What did you think about all this? And, what are your thoughts on the situation?
It's really hard because he did end up getting tested. I guess he got tested the next day, and you don't want stuff like that to happen. I think it's really weird that it turned into, something that should have been relatively simple got so complicated. And I feel bad for the guy. He went all the way down there to test him, and then he ends up being threatened with deportation and everything. I don't know enough about the laws there to comment about, if you need a working visa to drug test to take a sample of a drug test. But it seems, I don't know if it was, I don't know if it was someone trying to, delay a process, which if that was the case, I could see where people would be mad, or just a misunderstanding, in another way that everyone's going to learn from. I mean, there's going to be, when they start this drug testing, when the drug testing gets more and more, there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff early on that's going to end up having issues somewhat similar to this, in the sense that there'll be misunderstandings and stuff that needs to be worked out and problems that nobody foresaw coming. But eventually, I think that everyone will figure out exactly how to handle it. So, it's just like the first year, everyone kind of expects there's probably going to be a bunch of positives, but in time, the hopeful thing is that there won't be that many positives after, because if you look at regular sports, at the first time, a lot of people get caught because they think they can beat it, and then some people, if they can't, they learn, and the sport will clean up to a degree. Hopefully, it'll clean up greatly. I think it's everyone's goal, but time's going to tell.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like you're right, it is a new process, and there's going to be a lot of wrinkles to sort of iron out, and there's going to be obviously that learning process, which is what the commissions are going through now. But do you feel almost like there's been so many fumbles with the commissions, in even just the last 6 months? I mean, you had the John Jones cocaine test, you had Anderson Silva, and there's been so much criticism already. Do you feel like it's almost like an unnecessary fumble, like yet another one through the commissions, at a time where they really need to gain everybody's trust?
Yeah, well, it's just still a learning process. I mean, this is one. Again, when I look at it, it's like something that I would never foresee coming. I would not think that you need to go through all these processes as far as getting a working visa to get a test. I mean, I wouldn't, and maybe they should have thought of it, and maybe it is a fumble. I don't know. But again, every one of these things is a learning thing. I mean, just like I would just hope that if someone has a positive test 3.5, 4 weeks in front of a fight for a PED, that we will never have another situation where they actually fight. I'm hopeful. I mean, everyone, you learn that you've got to speed those results in, and it can't be in a month when your fight's in 3.5 weeks. That's just ridiculous. So hopefully these things will not happen in the future. And, since January, it's been a lot of weird, really December with the John Jones thing. It's been a lot of weird stuff, and it's, the end and destination is that we got this testing probably, this full-blown testing in July, which I'm guessing is probably a lot sooner than we would have gotten had there not been all this controversy a couple of months ago. So in the long run, I think it's for the good, even though there were some embarrassing moments.
And I mean, I think the weird part of the situation for a lot of the listeners right now and a lot of the MMA fans is, okay, you get this guy over and all right, he doesn't have the visa, but he's doing the drug test. You know, if I'm clean, if I have nothing to hide, wouldn't you just do the drug test? Why get him deported? That's the strangest part of the story for me.
Yeah, and it raises controversy, you know, and again, because everyone knows, I mean, anyone in the sport could be using. I mean, that's the bad part of the sport is what happens is when somebody does something Herculean in the sport, you know, that you just go, man, that's unbelievable. Instead of going like, wow, that's so awesome, people are thinking like, okay, what did he do to be able to do that? And in some cases, that speculation is completely warranted and actually accurate. And in some cases, I'm guessing that, you know, guys really just are that good. But I don't know which is which, and nobody really does. And that's one of the sad parts of the nature of modern sport right now. And so, yeah, when you're talking about, you know, the whole thing with the drug testing, I mean, most of the guys that I've talked with, and I'm sure it's the same with you, most of the guys seem to be in favor of a lot more drug testing because they know that it's not a level playing field. But there are guys who aren't, and I always think that the guys who aren't are probably the guys who, you know, there's a reason they're saying that, you know, they have the whole thing, and they'll start with the, you know, the little bit of excuses, you know what I mean? And there's always those little excuses that you come up with and to justify in your own mind that, well, it's not that bad for you or whatever. But we're going to see, you know, again, the sport's going to change a lot in the next 6 months, and I don't know what the end result will be, but I think it will be for the better. So I think it's good.
Sure. Switching topic, because we want to cover as many things as possible. Gustafsson versus Daniel Cormier, that is the fight that it looks like that will be happening. Ryan Bader, of course, on a 4-fight win streak. Gustafsson, his last fight, coming off a brutal knockout loss. What do you think? Was it the right decision to make Alexander Gustafsson the next opponent for Daniel Cormier?
That's a real controversial one because, you know, when I first heard it, I thought absolutely wrong, okay? I mean, because again, coming off, and it's the knockout loss. You know, if it wasn't for the knockout loss, I'd have a different opinion. But the more I thought about it from the, you know, instead of from a fan perspective, from a UFC perspective, I really did see their point because, in a sense, you're looking at who has the best, what's the most marketable fight, and I think that's the Gustafsson fight, and who is, I believe Gustafsson's a better fighter than Bader, even though Bader, you know, has won a couple in a row. I also think that the guys that Bader beat, I mean, you could argue Phil Davis, because Phil Davis did beat Gustafsson a couple years ago, but I think that most of those guys, the Gustafsson would have beaten just as easily. And I think that there's more interest in it. You know, they're going to book fights that they think the most people are interested in. And also the other part is that they're trying to, you know, strengthen markets. And Alexander Gustafsson for Europe, especially Scandinavia, can really strengthen that market. And also Alexander Gustafsson for a fight with John Jones will mean a million times more than Ryan Bader would mean, just in case Cormier loses. Or let's say Cormier just blows out his knee in the fight, and the other guy's just going to win on a default. Like, I'm not even saying, you know, like, because anything can happen in a fight anyway.
Sure.
So when I looked at everything from that, I could see where they were going with it. I mean, it's not both decisions, both guys to me. I don't think that Bader is quite there for a championship fight. If he beats Rashad Evans, I will completely change my mind, and that's where it's going to go. So I don't really, you know, and Gustafsson, you know, I think that he is, except for that knockout loss and that, you know, but before that he gave John Jones a fight that a lot of people thought John Jones won, and he was ranked higher if you look at the UFC ranking. So it's not, you know, I you know, grudgingly agree with their decision, but there's a part of me that, you know, it's not neither one is a perfect decision. I mean, you know, a guy getting a title fight under these circumstances, it's a bad one, but you know, there was just really no other choice other than those two, and of those two, it's like their job is to go like, what fight is the most competitive, and I think it's Gustafsson. And what fight does the public generally want to see more? And I think it's Gustafsson, but it's close. I don't think it's a landslide on that one. And then the next one is that, okay, going from there, if the big money fight in that division is with John Jones, how would you rank the opponents for John Jones as far as the public wanting to see it? And I would say that Cormier and Gustafsson are way ahead of Bader, so Bader becomes odd man out when we have this discussion of who's the odd man out, and it's Bader.
And it's interesting because, we come from a pro wrestling world, and there was that great feud that was building between Beta and DC. And you'd think it was almost a point where Beta was starting to make the crossover from sort of, in a lot of terms, a mid-carder to more of a main event talent. And the fight could have really taken him to that place. Do you think they were a little bit silly for ignoring the fact there was a real natural sort of feud brewing there that they could have really taken advantage of?
I think that they figured that in and still figured that there was still a little bit more juice for the Gustafsson fight, because I think there was. But if that thing, I think that thing helped Bader, but maybe they're just looking at. I really think that a lot of it is looking at it with the idea that John Jones and Gustafsson is a rematch that people want to see. And who knows? But again, who knows what's going to happen with John Jones? There's so many moving parts. It is a hard decision because you've got to look at the present and the future. But even for the present, and you're just looking at, okay, you put these two fights on the table right now, which one are more people around the world going to be interested in? And I still think it's Gustafsson by a little bit, and so that's where they made the call. But yeah, the Bader thing was interesting, and I was there when it happened, and I thought that, it was good for Bader because, again, I don't think people saw Bader as a real championship contender. I think they see him as a notch down. And this at least opened people's eyes and had people talking about him. And if he does beat Rashad, if they go with that at the next fight, I do think that no matter what, Bader is the guy who gets the next shot. I don't think you can deny him at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of fights that people want to see, Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo, UFC 189. I think the event is around about a month away now. It's a double title fight card as well. You've got Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald, the rematch. What do you think? Can UFC 189 pull the biggest numbers in UFC history? And will Conor still be the same draw if he loses?
Well, he'll be a bigger draw if he wins than if he loses. I think that Conor's a great personality, and he will be a draw. I think that he'll be a draw as long as he's in significant fights. As far as like a television draw, I think people will congregate to see him just like they did, because he did big numbers with Dennis Siver. Now, I don't think this is going to do the biggest pay-per-view numbers in UFC history. I don't see it beating UFC 100. But you never know, because pay-per-view to me is a last week thing, and it's just how much momentum comes up and what the mood of the country is, and things like that. And Conor really, what happens between the two of them. I feel that there's genuine hostility between the two, and so when you have that in the last week, it can brew over in different ways. On the flip side, Aldo's never drawn before. He doesn't speak English that well, if at all. So there's that's not a positive. UFC's going to promote the thing like crazy. They're going gung-ho on it. I think it's going to it'll do well. The gate, from all I hear, is that they've already broken the American record for the gate, which is very impressive for, as far as that goes. With all the huge fights that have taken place in UFC history, that these two guys got the record gate already. That's real big. It'll be big. It'll be the biggest show of the year. But I don't see it beating, the Brock Lesnar numbers or the real monster numbers. Just because I'm not sure how many, as far as the general public goes, I'm still not sure how much that lure is going to be on the last day, the last couple of days. If they can do something like Nick Diaz did with GSP, then they're going to do really well.
Now, we're sitting in an interesting situation here in Melbourne because the show comes out of Melbourne, Australia, and UFC 193, obviously the pay-per-view, is going to be down here in November. There's an interesting sort of situation happening. It's in between two stadiums. One is Etihad Stadium, and Dave, I don't know if you know, but the stadium can hold about 56,000 people.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the stadium, and the other one, Rod Laver Arena, right?
Rod Laver Arena, right, and that's the place, obviously, for the Australian Open. A great little stadium, but it is around 20,000. And I guess we all know when it comes to attendances, this could be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, attendance that the UFC has. Just wanted to get your opinion. Do you think they're going to bite the bullet and go with Etihad?
It depends on what card they have. I think if they had the right card, for sure they would have gone. I think if it was Cain and Mark Hunt, if Cain Velasquez would, is the champion or whatever. If Mark Hunt had beaten Miocic, and it was Mark Hunt going for the championship against either Cain Velasquez or Verdum, I think they'd have gone with the stadium. I think that with Mark Hunt losing, it becomes a big risk because it's like, well, what if we only do, they know the first show in Melbourne is going to be big, but But if it's 25, let's say it draws 25,000 in a 55,000 seat stadium, people will almost look at it like, well, you'd make more money doing the smaller stadium, and there'd be a better atmosphere with a packed smaller stadium. And they've only done 2 stadium shows really in their history, which was the one in Sweden, and that was with Gustafsson in the main event, and they'd already, Gustafsson was such a huge draw there, and it was 30,000 seats, not 55. And then the GSP one, which was the debut in Toronto, which they were shocked at how big it was, but they were very confident that they would draw 30,000 plus. I think that they made a mistake not going with a stadium in Montreal the first time with GSP and Matt Serra. But, again, they've never done Cowboy Stadium. They've never done – I know that Levi Stadium here where I live in San Jose really wanted a show, for the UFC, and UFC was just not interested because they didn't have the right fight. So I think that with no Australian going for the championship, I think that they may go with Rod Laver Arena. I would love to see I'd love to see the idea of, first show in Melbourne, 50,000 people. That would just be awesome, and it would help the sport in Australia because, everybody, you can't ignore something like that. And it's good here too, because people will go, wow, UFC did 50,000 people in Australia. It makes it, more international, whereas, drawing 15, 18, 20,000, that's, all sports do that, but yeah, I think it's a question if they have like the super main event, and I don't know what it would be. That's the thing. I mean, when I look at it, it's like, if they could get, I don't know, if they could get 2 title matches in, it's like, say, Conor and Ronda on the same show in November. Is that possible? Would they go with that? I don't know. I'm betting they go with the arena, just because I just don't see that again. I just don't know what the main event is that will make them comfortable enough to where they're going to go, you know what, we're going to kill it the first time. I mean, it's just going to be unbelievable. I just don't know that there's that unbelievable match right now.
The more you explain it, the more it makes sense. I think they need that, like Mark Hunt or Hector Lombard, like an Aussie, where the casual fans who don't know MMA.
Hector won't even be eligible by then, right?
No, but that's what I'm saying. Obviously both of them kind of dropped the ball. Mark Hunt lost. Hector Lombard, if he beat Rory McDonald at UFC 186, he would have probably gotten a title shot in Melbourne just to draw the casuals. People who don't know MMA go, oh, you know what? I don't know much about it, but there's an Aussie guy fighting for a title. I'm going to go check this out.
Right. I think like Hunt, that Hunt match, if they could have done anything, Mark going for the title, I'm pretty sure they'd have gone to the stadium there. I know, they got them both, as you know, they got them both holds on both of them. And the original plan was the stadium, just because of the feeling. Melbourne is in their mind, and I know that Melbourne is such a strong market that so many of the, people who went to those original shows in Sydney really came from Melbourne. So that tells you that, at the first time in Melbourne, should be a monster show. So, yeah.
Yeah, and very interested to see what happens. Obviously, very exciting that's happening down here. Now, we're just going to switch gears for a second, David. We really appreciate your time. We know how busy you are. We're just going to talk pro wrestling for a couple of minutes before all the MMA listeners start getting angry at us. The first one is an interesting topic that we wanted to discuss with you. It's something that you were one of the first person to report and discuss, and this is the update. And we're just wondering if there's any updates on TNA being canceled from Destination America, because they've obviously brought Ring of Honor onto the network. A lot of people say, hey, maybe this is a part of the plan for TNA to go, Ring of Honor to stick around because it's cheaper to produce and it's a good show as well. Are there any updates? Do you know anything else about the situation?
There's not really an update. I mean, time's going to tell. I mean, we'll know when they announce their fall schedule. I don't think the Ring of Honor thing seems to me like a separate deal in the sense that, TNA, they spent a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars a year on TNA. And I think that was the problem with TNA. The ratings aren't a problem. They do well above what the station averages. So I don't, but I mean, I know the decision was made that they were going to finish them in the end of September because of the costs involved and the difficulty in selling sponsorship. They put these 2 shows together. I mean, I think if both shows, if the ratings for the shows, for both shows continue to build and TNA's numbers on Wednesdays are higher than they are on Fridays, I think that, they could certainly rescind that decision. There's no reason they couldn't. I think that if Ring of Honor does similar numbers to TNA, and they are below TNA right now. But if they were to end up, in 2 months doing similar numbers, they'll go, God, we can get the same numbers with less cost. They're going to go with the same numbers at less cost and maybe ask TNA for a second hour. I mean, Ring of Honor for a second hour, I should say. So yeah, there's many ways it can go. I don't think anything is a definite, although, you know, the memo was pretty strong. And nothing's been said. You know, there was a memo that, you know, internally at the Discovery Network where they basically said we're done with TNA at the end of September, and nobody has contradicted that yet. So I don't see that as a good sign for TNA.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see what happens. Final topic we want to cover with you, Dave, and then we're going to let you go. Just want to get your thoughts. You know, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Brock Lesnar. As you know by now, of course, or for those who haven't seen, on the Stone Cold podcast on the WWE Network after Raw, Paul Heyman spoke to Stone Cold about fighting Brock Lesnar, and Stone Cold cut a promo making it seem like he may consider having a match with him, Brock Lesnar, at WrestleMania Texas. He then went on to retract his comments, saying it won't happen. What are your thoughts? Is there any possibility you could see Steve have his last match with Lesnar at WrestleMania and come back for one more?
My impression from people who are close to the situation is that the match is not going to happen. You know, I've just been told it's not happening. You know, I mean, I never say anything 100% in wrestling because I've seen things change all the time, but I know Vince wasn't happy with the promo because people were getting too excited about a match that he was afraid he couldn't deliver, and he didn't have on the schedule, and those guys weren't committed to it. At the same time, he's got a big stadium to fill, and WrestleMania is the biggest show, and nobody can come up with a better match and with a better idea of a match. Brock will do it in a heartbeat, obviously. I mean, it's Brock's dream match. The question is, you know, there's a reason Steve hasn't wrestled in all these years, and it's because he doesn't choose to wrestle. And I know he's never, like, he never 100% closed the book, but the times I've spoke to Austin about wrestling another match, I always get the feeling that he's not going to do it, that he's moved on. You know, he's 51 now. 50.
Wow.
He's 50 right now. He'll be 51 by the time WrestleMania next year comes along, and he doesn't need the money, but it would be such huge money that, you know, you could justify it. But you know, again, like, there's been a lot of WrestleManias in a lot of years and a lot of ideas that they could have come up with for Steve Austin to wrestle, and he hasn't wrestled, and we're talking 12 years. There's a reason. And if his neck is in rough shape, you know, WWE, if a guy is in, you know, like a lot of guys, you know, they're not putting a lot of guys in the ring, and they plagued certain guys, you know, Edge, Mick Foley. I mean, these guys are never going to, you know, Rick's a different situation, but Edge and Mick Foley are never going to wrestle again. And Edge, I would think, is young enough and physically fit enough to where, you know, but he's got the neck problem. And I you know, getting Austin cleared, it may be difficult, and I don't think that they may not want the risk. But yeah. And Steve, at the end of the day, Steve's never jumped at one of these things, and it was always like it would take a perfect set of scenarios to ever even get him to consider it. The thing is that versus Brock Lesnar at AT&T Stadium, to set the all-time attendance record, that is a perfect as a series of situations you're ever going to get for the match. So my feeling is that if Steve is not going to wrestle now, then he really will never wrestle again. And I think that he's probably not going to. He said he's not. I think that if he was 50-50 or something like that, I think that he would have not said no specifically outright said no. And other people have told me that aren't Steve have also outright said it's just not going to happen. And they don't, you know, it's a Vince decision and it's an Austin decision, and it just, I think that whatever, I think it's health related. I mean, money wise, you know, everyone can make money with it. There's no doubt about that.
It's interesting. The whole situation's interesting because obviously Paul Heyman came in and sort of said it with the mindset of, look, we'll see what happens. But he knew that, obviously. I mean, surely he knew what he said to Steve was going to be a catalyst.
What he was doing.
Yeah, he knew what he was doing, right, Dave? I mean, he would have gotten in a bit of trouble. I mean, he sort of backed Steve into a bit of a corner, didn't he, during that podcast? I mean, what was he going to say that Brock Lesnar was going to
He could have said, look, I'm a retired wrestler. It's a great idea. I'd love to do it, but my time has passed. You know, it's kind of like with with Bret Hart, when asked about Kurt Angle years and years ago, there was like a lot of talk, and it was, you know, Bret's thing was, I would love to wrestle, and I dream of wrestling Kurt Angle, but it's just never going to happen because the day is over. And I mean, and that's really the same thing with Steve. It's been 12 years, and you know, I know people, because it's pro wrestling and it's the fantasy world, you can do things that you couldn't do, you know, in a real fight situation. But there's still the neck injury is very real, and Steve's pride is very real in the sense of, you know, he doesn't want to go out there and be a shell of himself and go out there and be, not at the level or the level to have a great match. He doesn't want to come in and stink up the joint like other guys who have stayed too long have, and he's aware of that, and he doesn't want to be that guy. So, he would need 6 months of hard training. That's what he said in the past. And he also has a lot of different commitments in a lot of different places. But whatever it was, he pretty much said no. And I know a lot of people think that the no is like a tease because in wrestling so many times you're told the opposite because they want you to think the opposite and then you do it. But I don't think this is the case here.
Yeah, well, very well put, Dave, and very interesting insight. Thank you very much for your time, guys. You can subscribe to the Wrestling Observer newsletter at www.f4wonline.com, and make sure to follow Dave on Twitter at Dave Meltzer, WON. Dave, it's always a pleasure, and thank you so much for taking the time for jumping on Submission Rate. I know all the listeners really, really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks. It's my pleasure. I've been reading your stuff and the interviews for so long, and so it's kind of like really cool for me to be on the show.
Well, considering how long we've been doing it for, I think we've been fans of yours for longer. Dave Meltzer, guys, we're going to let him go, and we're going to get on with our UFC 188 breakdown. Pretty much the reason why we're not going to have Dave stick on for the breakdown is because he's a busy man, and we're going to be talking to him for a bit. Lots to talk about with UFC 188. Not the greatest card. It definitely wasn't any UFC 187. It definitely wasn't any UFC New Orleans. Dennis, what did you think of the card in general? Before we start breaking down individual fights, what did you think? What sort of vibe did you get from this card once the dust had settled?
Yeah, Cass, it's a great point there. Look, I didn't really pay as much attention to the prelim fights as I would have liked to, but in general, I expected a lot more from the matchups that were on the card. I really think the main event really saved it. If the main event wasn't as exciting as it was and didn't have as much of an impact on the MMA world as it did, I would have said it was a bit of a dud card, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I definitely think the main event saved it, and I think it was a really weird event in general, just because it was like Bizarro Land. A lot of things that you expected to happen didn't happen, and then let's take a few of the prelim card fights. I'm just going to sort of lump them up in one bunch, like Johnny Case versus Francisco Trevino. Trevino coming in here undefeated. Johnny Case, I didn't really know too much about the guy. I really thought that Trevino was going to put in a Muay Thai clinic, and instead he looked completely underwhelming in the first round. Then you had that ridiculous eye poke, and then nothing spectacular from him for the rest of the round. I remember seeing him entering, thinking, man, this guy's so pumped, so confident. He was so confident in the first round, and you see it happen not all the time, but so often when fighters come in just ridiculously relaxed and confident. I always think, like, are they too confident? Is it going to be one of those cases where in 15 minutes they're going to be looking really disappointed with the referee having the other guy's hand up? And it's pretty much exactly what happened. Patrick Williams, awesome standing guillotine, absolutely destroyed Alejandro Perez. Efren Escudero, I'm really happy to see him not only back in the UFC, his last fight was a win, and now he finally got the win here in Mexico. Beat Drew Dober. It sucks for Drew Dober. Drew Dober, for those who don't remember, was the guy who got absolutely robbed when the referee thought that he tapped and he didn't actually tap. This time, Efren Escudero got him straight away in a standing guillotine choke, and he did actually tap. Then you got the main event of the prelims. I'm actually pretty glad this was on the prelims. Henry Cejudo, one of the brightest stars at flyweight, completely disappointing performance. He laid aside at a bad taco. And the one interesting thing about that is, to me, it was honestly more interesting than the fight. Before we talk about this taco, Chico Camus looked really good in the fight. He stuffed, I think, every single one of Henry Cejudo's takedowns. I think at one point it was like 7 or 10 takedowns in a row. Considering Henry Cejudo being an Olympic level athlete, or I believe Olympic gold medalist, not being able to take Chico down was just crazy. It was one of those examples that I'm talking about where you think something's going to happen. Like, yeah, Henry Cejudo, if he's not going to outstrike him, he's going to take him down for sure. Didn't happen, which was insane. The contest pretty much largely consisted entirely consisted on the feet. And I got to say, with Henry Cejudo, it's a good thing that he is a decent striker. For a wrestler, he is a really decent striker. He's got power, got decent striking, so it's lucky that he does. Otherwise, he would have been completely screwed on the feet. You saw that recently with Pat Cummins, fantastic wrestler, but, on the feet just didn't really have much for OSP once you couldn't take him down. And then, he completely blew it. And then he started a bad taco. The crazy thing to me about that is, what are you doing eating tacos when you know that you have to make weight, and he's notorious for having difficult weight cuts and not being able to make weight. So the whole thing was just really strange. Going to the main card, Tecia Torres versus Angela Hill. What did you think of this fight, Dennis? No one really liked it. Tecia Torres before the fight said that she wanted to be remembered. She wanted to get the win and have the fans remember her. Was it memorable, Dennis?
No way, not memorable at all. You know, you could say that Tecia Torres had a couple of good highlights with her grappling, but just didn't really take advantage of the positions she was in. And Angela Hill looked like really, really bad as well. The whole fight was just really underwhelming, and it was a terrible start to the main card. And I watched it out in a bar this time around, and the whole crowd was dead. Their fight absolutely did nothing for the people. And, you know, she had some good positions on the ground. Angela Hill needs to really improve her grappling because obviously she's a great striker. Tecia Torres, look, I see some minor improvements, but I just don't see her matching up for a title shot anytime too soon. If she does get a title shot, I just think if Joanna is champion, she'd just get torn apart. Wait, featherweight. That's no, women's strawweight. That's right. So yeah, so Joanna is the champion there. Yeah, I think Joanna would tear her apart. It was, I mean, I think she's a rising star, Tecia Torres. She's got the look. She's all athletic and stuff like that. People like her, but she's still got ways to go in terms of putting on exciting fights for me.
Speaking of looks, man, did you see the embeddeds where she was in the hot tub?
I saw a bit of that. Yeah, she also said she likes to wear the pants in the relationships that she's in. So I think she was with Charles Rose, and maybe that turned the man off. I know it turns me off when I hear that kind of talk.
Anybody got time for that shit? Fuck that. Tell you what, man, there's a lot of people that get on Tecia Torres for how muscly she is. God damn, she's a hard-bodied woman, and I don't have any problems with that. And I appreciate that she takes a lot of pride in the bikinis she wears. As far as the fight itself, you know, Tecia Torres, I actually think she'd be a really interesting matchup for Joanna just because she does have the wrestling and she does have the Taekwondo background. She's got very formidable striking, and that's what everybody thought this was going to be about. Tecia Torres with her Taekwondo background and, of course, wrestling, and Angela Hill with a Muay Thai background. People thought it was going to be a stand-up war. Didn't happen at all, and I think that's why people were so pissed off and disappointed. Angela Hill, she was good at not letting Tecia Torres pass. I think Tecia Torres mounted her, she got into side control, but she wasn't able to do anything, so Angela was good at neutralizing her game. What she wasn't good at is getting out of half guard, getting back to the guard, and standing up. So it made for a really boring fight. It was basically a stalemate, and you know, Tecia Torres, she said she wanted to be remembered after this. She got her win for the Latinas and all that good stuff, but she wasn't remembered at all. Definitely a forgettable fight. Yair Rodriguez and Charles Rosa definitely came out there looking to make us all forget about that. Probably the best fight on the card. Dennis, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, amazing fight. Best fight of the card. A great contest. But Yair, that's how you pronounce his first name, Cass? Yair Rodriguez.
Every time I see Yair, I think of Yair Marks from Entourage, the rich Arab billionaire.
Yeah, you know, I mean, look, it was a really, really good fight. It was, I almost saved the card. It was very, very fun to watch. Charles Rosa, obviously, extremely tough guy. It looked like he might have been hurt here or there, like his shoulder or something like that. There was some really strange sort of trips that he had when he was going for takedowns. Not sure what was going on there. But my one criticism for Rodriguez, apart from the fact, you know, he's a very, very impressive fighter, but there were a lot of positions, there were a lot of dominant positions that he had, and he just got up and stood up and then just went back to striking. I believe at one point he had the S mount, and he got up from that. I mean, in most cases and in a lot of cases, seasoned guys in the UFC would get into that position and just finish the fight from there. It's like winning the lottery for a lot of guys just getting to that position. So the fact that he was able to get to so many dominant positions, you know, my hat goes off to him. But I just like to see him calm down a little bit and really take advantage of the positioning that he gets and really hold that positioning, because I think he could be a really, really dangerous fighter in the division. But nevertheless, it was a really, really great fight. He's obviously got a lot of exciting strikes, flying strikes, a really great grappler, but he just needs to tighten up his game a little bit and just be a bit more strategic with the positions that he ends up in.
Well, I think that's probably why Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg are talking about how he's kind of like a mix of Anthony Pettis and John Jones. I think it's way too early to be making those kind of comparisons. I mean, he's got some nice kicks. He's a wild man. That first round was absolutely insane. He definitely doesn't have the wrestling of a John Jones, but he likes to take risks. He likes to take risks. He does a lot of interesting things you don't expect. And I think it comes from being a young fighter. Like, he's only got, 6, I think, professional fights. And I think as he moves up in competition, like, nothing against Charles Rosa, but Charles Rosa isn't quite up there. You know, once Yair Rodriguez, and if Yair Rodriguez gets up to the top of the division and is really sort of closing in on a title shot, all big ifs, then he's going to have to be a lot more careful and probably stay in those positions. But the interesting thing is, before the fight, he said he doesn't want to look for a knockout or submission. He wants a war. So he's that kind of guy. I guess he wants... I don't know. I guess he's kind of like a Chris Lieben, or just one of those guys that doesn't really care how he wins. It doesn't really care whether he wins or not, as long as it's an interesting fight.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, it's an interesting thing that you mentioned there. I didn't know that he said that, but he definitely got it, and it was an absolutely spectacular fight, a lot of fun. And a lot of guys don't do that, don't go out there and take risks and really want a war. They want to go out there and strategically win to make sure they still have a job with the UFC. So it's great to see a young fighter taking that kind of approach.
Yeah, for sure. There was even a crazy part where Charles Rosa got a takedown, and it looked like a really nice takedown. He had both legs together, and Yair Rodriguez swept him, ended up on top, and started pouring elbows. So really, really fun fight. Let's move on. Middleweights, Kelvin Gastelum and Nate Marquardt. Kelvin Gastelum obviously moving back up to middleweight. Nate Marquardt trying to stay relevant. What do you think of the fight, Dennis?
Man, it's tough. It's tough. Everybody knows that I'm a huge Nate Marquardt fan from back in the day. He was one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. Personally, for me, it was tough to watch this fight. I think that Nate had a really great career. In this fight, he just didn't have much to offer to Gastelum. And it looked like to me, and this is to me personally, and again, I might be wrong, but it looked like to me he wanted a way out of the fight eventually when he realized that it just wasn't going, his way. And it wasn't his fault. It's just, I don't want to say that he's past it, but he just doesn't belong with the best of the best in the octagon anymore. And Kevin Gastelum, he looked pretty good, but Nate Marquardt, to me, he didn't look very good at all. I mean, I don't know what his future is, what he plans on doing, and it's his choice because he's a veteran and he's done so much in the sport. But, I personally don't want Nate Marquardt to go out like a Josh Koscheck and, sort of show new fans who don't know about him or anything that he's done. A side of him that isn't anywhere close to the level that he used to be at. So it was tough for me to watch in that regard, but a great win for Kevin Gastelum nevertheless.
Yeah, I think a win over Nate Marquardt for a guy like Gastelum is still a big deal. I mean, when you're coming down from welterweight, even though he was previously at middleweight, and there's still always those questions like, oh, will he be big enough and things like that. I think this is a really, really solid win. And the way he did it, like, Nate Marquardt has been in there with some really top guys. Obviously fought for the title against Anderson Silva. He's had a lot of good fights. He's had a lot of good wins, and he's definitely faced stiff competition. So for Kelvin Gastelum to go out there and do that, I mean, even Brad Tavares, like, he didn't stop Nate Marquardt. He took him all the way to a decision. And to have Kelvin Gastelum go out there and, Nate Marquardt couldn't even answer the third round. I mean, that's just insane. The thing about Nate Marquardt is he's been around for so long. He started his pro career in 1999. He fought at Pancrase. He fought in Vale Tudo. I think they said he's had like over 50-something fights. That's a lot of miles. That's a really, really long career. And, I guess you got to show respect to a veteran like Nate Marquardt, but I think it's pretty much time to retire. If not after this fight, it's got to be close. Surely he's got to be at that Mark Munoz level where he knows it's coming to an end and he's looking for that one more, good fight. If everything goes well, maybe go out on a win, finish his career in his hometown or something like that. But It's got to be close to over. And, kudos to Trevor Whitman for stopping the fight like that. He didn't even hesitate. When Nate Marquardt said he's got nothing else left, it wasn't even a question. I think he asked him one more time, no, you done? Yep. And then I don't think Nate Marquardt wanted to quit, but I also don't think he necessarily wanted to continue fighting. And I think that was his way of basically saying, I give up or I tap out without actually saying those words. There was a point in that second round where Kelvin Gastelum was pouring it on. Joe Rogan was hilarious because he was like, damn, Eric Liata should stop the fight. And then he's like, Just stop it. And I love Joe Rogan for that. I love how, honest he is and things like that. It was hilarious. But you know what? He was entirely right. And I think I like Dan Miragliotti. He's usually pretty good, even though he's had some weird stoppages, like the Frank Mir vs. Shane Carwin one. I think there was one fairly recently as well. But all in all, yeah, it looked to me like Nate Marquardt was absolutely done. It looked like he did not want to be there at all.
Yeah, for sure. And look, if I'm in the UFC, I'm going to look at that and I'm going to think, look, maybe it's time to let Nate go. And because he just doesn't belong with a lot of these fighters, and I just don't want him to get hurt. I'm hoping that he just moves on to the next phase of his career, because obviously he'd be a great trainer. He's got a great family. But in terms of fighting competitively, I think we've seen over and over and over, he's just not the same Nate Marquardt he once was. But he was an incredible fighter at his peak. And a lot of people who didn't get a chance to watch him back in the day need to go back and check him out, because he had some amazing, amazing fights.
On the other side of the coin, you got Kelvin Gastelum, and it's like, what do you do with him? Afterwards, Dana White said he's not going to welterweight. He completely put the kibosh on that. He said he's done nothing to show me that he can go back to welterweight. So for the time being, Kelvin Gastelum is still a middleweight. And, I mean, hey, he looked really good tonight. Granted, it was against a guy who's on his way out. I mean, could he hang in there with the top 10 guys, the guys like Rockhold and Jacare and things like that? I think it's still too early to say, but, I think as long as he's not killing himself with weight cuts, I think the sky's the limit for Kelvin Gastelum. Ultimately, I definitely want to see him go back to welterweight, because I think as welterweight, I mean, he may even become a champion, or at the very least get a title shot, or at least become one of those elite guys like the Rory McDonalds, the Johnny Hendrickses, and be up there in the top 5. One thing, though, and I understand what Dana White is saying, not necessarily siding with him, but I guess, look, at the end of the day, it's Dana's decision whether he lets him go, and I think maybe for with Dana, it was just kind of a message to send to Gastelum, like, hey, you're not ready to go down to welterweight, to see how badly Kelvin Gastelum wants it. If he says, oh, okay, I guess I'm a middleweight, then that would tell Dana, well, I guess you don't really care. You don't really want it that badly. But even in this fight, like, he barely made weight, and he looked really, really soft. Now, whether that's because to go up to middleweight, he just gained a lot of fat, I don't know. But, you'd think he'd at least start trying to lean out and lower that body fat percentage. But he looked pretty soft in this fight. That's probably the only thing I can take away from Kelvin Gastelum, because other than that, he looked fantastic.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, in the embeddeds, it was just kind of clear he wasn't going to kill himself to lose much weight, because he didn't need to. I mean, if I'm Kelvin Gastelum's manager, I'm getting on the phone to Dana White and I'm finding out exactly what he'd like Kelvin to do. Does he need him to do a test cut? Does he want to speak to him again? Whatever he wants, I would deliver. So if I was his manager, I would make sure the communications are there. I would constantly be talking to him. If I was Kevin Gastelum myself, I would try to talk to Dana White myself.
Yeah.
Try and convey to him how important to me it is to get back up to welterweight, how sorry I am, how I'm open to do anything, test cut, anything. I think that would probably be the quickest way. Or if they don't have that communication, I guess he might need to win a couple more middleweight. I mean, it's interesting that you say that, Cass, because who knows? Maybe he could beat a bunch of middleweights, but if he was in welterweight and he won a whole bunch of fights, maybe he gets to the title shot a lot quicker than if he's stuck at middleweight for a few fights. But it's definitely a very interesting situation for Gastelum, almost like he's a child and Dana White's trying to teach him a lesson.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. And, you make a really interesting point. You're right, because with Tyron Woodley, I think that was the fight where if he won, and I think Dana White even said it might be Kelvin Gastelum over Rory McDonald. But I think that was if he beat Tyron Woodley. And he would have had a huge win streak had he beat Tyron Woodley. So I think he would have been maybe one more fight away from a title shot. Here, in middleweight, there's such a big logjam as it is. There's so many contenders. It's like, you don't even know what to do. You've got Luke Rockhold, you've got Jacare, you've got Machida or Yoel Romero hanging in the back. There's so many guys. It's like Kelvin Gastelum starting again. So I definitely understand why he would want to go back to welterweight. The only good thing about it is that he's a really young guy. So even if, hypothetically, he stays at middleweight forever and has to work his way back up the ladder, he's got plenty of time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting to see what happens. Now, the Main event of the evening, Cass. I mean, a fight that a lot of fans have been talking about for a long, long time. When Eddie Alvarez was the Bellator champion and Gilbert Melendez was the Strikeforce champion. Some trash talk between the boys before that. So this was a fight that a lot of fans were really looking forward to. And I mean, Gilbert Melendez, obviously a very, very exciting fighter. Eddie Alvarez had that one fight against Donald Cerrone. People really wanted to see what he was made of. I mean, I personally had big expectations from this fight. I was expecting it was gonna be a very, very exciting one. Did you have big expectations from the guys going into this one, Cass?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be massive. These guys have been to fight for so long. I think around about 5 years or so. There was constant back and forth talk over the years. It was like I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example, but I don't have an analogy for this one. But yeah, I expected big things from this one. Joe Rogan at the end of the fight said, very good fight. It definitely lived up to expectations. Completely disagree. I don't think it lived up to the expectations at all. I think there were a few moments in the fight that were pretty exciting. Gilbert Melendez, he landed a couple of big shots in the first round. Alvarez landed some spinning elbows in the later rounds. But other than that, I mean, if Eddie Alvarez didn't have his eye half closed, I don't think it would have nearly been as exciting, just because that brought an element of drama to the actual fight itself, regardless of the trash talk or anything else before that. But the fight itself, I don't think it was that exciting. I think both guys measured each other a lot. Gilbert Melendez, a lot of his offense consisted of the jab, and then trying to go for those home run shots. Eddie Alvarez, I mean, he did leg kicks. He got yelled at by Henry Hooft, and then he took down Gilbert Melendez. I don't know. I didn't think it was that great. It didn't seem like two guys that were fighting that absolutely hated each other. It seemed almost like two guys that, I don't want to say didn't want to lose, but it definitely didn't live up to the hype for me at all.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously the big situation, him blowing his nose. I was reading Bas Rutten's Facebook page, and he had a very, very interesting story that I want to share with all the listeners right now. He says that I was commentating Eddie Alvarez's fight at Dream in Japan in 2008. He just fought and Kawajiri and was going to face Aoki in the finals. So he had one more fight, and that night it was a 4-man tournament. But as I was black from a strike that Kawajiri had landed, I called someone over from Pride to the commentating booth and told him to run to the dressing room to tell Eddie that he should not blow his nose. He came back to the booth and said, too late, he just did. And he had to pull out of the fight. The doctor didn't allow him to fight his eyes shut. So it was a previous case for Eddie as well. It's one of those situations. Fighters have to be very, very careful blowing their nose in fights. Most of the time they don't know that they have damage to their eye, but it's just got to be something they have to be aware of not doing just in case there is. I got to say, in this fight, particularly for me, and this might be a different opinion from you, Casper, but I thought Gilbert Melendez was really set to win that fight. I mean, Eddie had that swollen eye. He didn't look very good at the start of the fight. And I really thought Melendez was just going to target that eye and just get a doctor's stoppage pretty much. And what happened afterwards with Eddie coming in with his wrestling, and I was really impressed with the heart that he showed, taking over and winning the fight. I had no problems with the decision. I know Nate Diaz was saying that he thought Gilbert Melendez had won, but what I was thinking the whole time is, Melendez, why are you just standing there? Let loose, hit that eye. All you need to do is land some good shots on that eye, and the fight would have been ended. So for me, I was really disappointed with Melendez in that regard. I really thought it was his fight to win after that eye was swollen up, and I just didn't think he pulled the trigger on it. I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's the crazy thing. Like, it wasn't even an eye injury, it was his nose. So it's almost like a free pass. As long as he can hit that eye and make it look cosmetically worse, if he could, get it to the ground and just pound on that eye and just make it look worse, bust it open, yeah, you're right, the doctor would have stopped it. So, and I agree, I believe Melendez was the favorite in this fight. I didn't necessarily pick who was going to win. But I completely agree with you. I think Melendez kind of blew it. And, yet again, it's another case of Gilbert Melendez going to a close decision. And I don't know whether it was because of the altitude. I know a lot of people in general on that card were affected by the altitude. There was times where I saw Gilbert Melendez taking in deep breaths. And I know that against, I believe it was Benson Henderson, Gilbert Melendez said that he sort of took his foot off the pedal at the end because he thought he had done enough to win. So I don't know whether it was a similar situation. I don't know whether he was saving up his energy just so that he doesn't gas at the end. I do agree, though. I don't know how much controversy there was over that decision. I do think it was Eddie Alvarez who won in the end, especially at the end where he threw that spinning elbow. He busted open Gilbert Melendez, and I think that was kind of like the nail in the coffin. But other than that, I mean, all Gilbert really had was a good first round. You know, the interesting thing is he outstruck him. Gilbert Melendez, to his credit, he outstruck him. He had a nice jab, but it was Eddie Alvarez's control and wrestling and those big shots that he landed that I reckon sealed the deal and got him the win. But I think it could have gotten either way. It was one of those weird ones where, like, how do you judge it? Do you judge it based on Gilbert Melendez outstriking him, or do you judge it by Eddie Alvarez taking him down and really not doing that much other than controlling him? So I would have been happy either way, but honestly, I do think Eddie Alvarez won that one. And it's good because now he's got that win after his UFC debut loss to Cowboy Cerrone, which would have looked really bad. Eddie Alvarez, who's another guy that was meant to come into the UFC for so long and fans wanted it. I mean, imagine him on a 2-0 losing streak in the UFC. As far as Gilbert Melendez goes, though, it's not exactly a nail in the coffin, but it kind of closes the door on a third title shot.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And now really put some pressure on him for his next outing to show people what Gilbert Melendez is made of. So interested to see what happens with him next, Cass. Now, the big main event, Fabricio Verdum versus Cain Velasquez. A lot of talk, obviously, from Verdum about Cain not being a legit Mexican. Talking a bit of smack here and there. Few embeddeds here and there. DC telling Verdum, oh, you shouldn't have pissed him off. I thought it was all kind of stupid. I mean, it was just like I didn't really see the big like, whoa, he said that kind of thing. But I mean, look, I guess Cain really got upset about it.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because it seems to be that it was the biggest talk of the week. It seemed like everyone forgot about the fight itself, and everyone's talking about, is Cain a real Mexican? Is he American? And everyone is discussing it. Every forum you go on, every YouTube comment, everything, it's about, this whole real Mexican thing. I mean, I don't know. Would you be offended? You're Ukrainian. You're full Ukrainian. You don't have anything else in you, right? You're not like Jamaican or anything, right?
I don't think... I could be related to Fedor Emelianenko.
You probably are. I think there's like a 95% chance you are. Probably.
Yeah.
But okay, so you're Ukrainian. Would you be upset if someone? But so you've lived in America and you've lived in Australia for a good better part of your life. Would you be upset if someone's like, you're not a real Ukrainian?
Absolutely not. I think first of all,
you're like a presidential candidate. It's like, did you do this? Absolutely not.
Look, so first I'd tell him that I did not have sex with that woman, and then I would go on to explain. Look, I would not be offended by it. I mean, at the end of the day, if you think you're really Mexican, you know that you're really Mexican. Why does it matter if some guy goes, oh, he's not really Mexican? Why would you even pay attention to it? I guess I'd just have one of those reactions where I'd be like, well, he can say what he wants to say. I am who I am, and the fans know who I am. But I definitely wouldn't. I don't know. I wouldn't be upset about it. I felt like it was just taken too seriously. I don't know, because Cass, I mean, you're in a similar situation as well. You're a Polish Australian. I mean, you were born.
Hey, I'm Polish.
Well, that's right. Yeah, you might be related to Joanna, but I was going to say you were born in Australia or
no, Poland.
Poland. All right. So you're born in Poland. You go back. You're a champ over there, and whatever. Like Fabricio Verdum says, you're not really Polish. Do you get offended at him?
In the time it would take me to become champion, I would say, Fabricio, what are you still doing fighting? First and foremost. Secondly, I would also deny having sex with that woman, and then they'd be like, what woman? I'd be like, oh, okay, well, then I did. That's cool. I don't know, man. No, look, I think with like nationality and culture and all that kind of stuff, I think you are what you identify with. Like I was born in Poland. I came here when I was like 5 years old. I guess lived the Polish culture when I was in Poland. Didn't really do that, since I lived here in Australia. I don't really... I've forgotten most of Polish, so I don't know. I wouldn't really say I live a Polish lifestyle or anything like that. I don't know. I guess it's like with Cain Velasquez, if he wasn't born in... But here's the thing, I guess I'm kind of Australian, but I'm not, sort of thing, because both my parents are Polish, going back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, so I have Polish blood, and I was born there, but I live in Australia. And I guess with Cain Velasquez, it's like, well... Verdum was saying he's American, but both his parents are full-blooded Mexicans. You know what I mean? Like, and I was thinking about this. I'll give you an example, right? I had a couple of friends in primary school, right? One kid, his name was Matthew Alderuccio. He was, I think, Italian background, but he was born in America because his parents were holidaying, all right? And then, like, I don't know, I guess he was there for like a month or whatever, and then they came back to Australia. So it's like, what, is he American now? And then another kid, Matthew Lithgow, his parents also on holiday. He was born on a boat. So it's like, what is he? Botanesian?
Refugee. He's a refugee.
He's a refugee. Yeah, he. You know what he is. He's from parts unknown. That's
Someone's deporting him right now after listening to the show.
Yeah, exactly. They're like 20 years we've been on the case. We got you, Matthew Lithgow.
Yeah,
but I don't know. It's one of those things. Like, I don't know. Like, if you have Italian parents and you full on live the Italian culture and lifestyle and associate with other Italians and stuff like that, I'd say. But you live in America or Australia or Canada. I guess there's nothing wrong with saying, well, you know, you're Italian. I think, I don't know. I guess it's also because Verdum said it. I don't think it's something that Verdum really thought long about. Like, I'll show him. It was just a whatever. Like, I think because Verdum's been living in Mexico or whatever, staying in Mexico for so long, he speaks Mexican. He speaks better Mexican than Kane. So I think it was like a little dig. I think Kane got upset because he's been heralded as, you know, the Mexican champion, Mexican this, and the UFC are really pushing this whole like, he's Mexican. Did you hear he's Mexican? He's also a fighter, but he's Mexican. And then like, you know, for like his face is all over the posters. So I think for Verdum to say that, I guess that's why Kane got pissed off. But for the whole argument of Kane's not Mexican, he's technically this. I mean, his parents are full-blooded Mexicans. I believe he lives the Mexican culture. I'd say there's nothing wrong with him calling himself Mexican.
Yeah, that's right. He's done a lot for sort of Mexican fans as well. He's got the brown pride. He's always repping Mexico, always doing the whole entrance music and, yeah, like you said, the cultural stuff. So, people, the man's Mexican, all right? So let's all calm down. And didn't he say, he said something about Luke Rockhold as well, like he's a nobody or something? And
yeah, I think he was under the impression Luke Rockhold was the one who showed Kane that. And then, he said Luke Rockhold is a nobody, and he said he doesn't like him. He said he gets along well with DC, but he doesn't like Luke Rockhold, and Luke Rockhold pretty much had the same sentiments. He said that Verdum's self-absorbed, and he's a fake, and he's a phony, and this and that. You know, as far as this whole, is he...
He's a phony.
Well, actually, you know what? I don't know.
Things are getting serious.
Yeah, I know, right? You think shots were fired before? Jesus.
Yeah. To me, like, I watch The Embedded, and, like, there's different levels for me. Like, Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo, like, those kinds of Embeddeds where I'm like, oh, shit, what's going to happen? This one, I felt like I was watching Mean Girls 3, the MMA edition. He had the little table with, like, Verdum and his posse, and then you got like the Mean Girls, like Luke Rockhold, DC, and like Cain Velasquez sitting there like a little bit away from them, and they could see each other, but they're like quietly whispering to each other like things about each other. It didn't excite me, but I appreciate what they were trying to do, but yeah, it wasn't one of my most sort of favorite kind of embedded series has gone into it.
And it's funny because they were eating, so it's almost like they were in a lunchroom talking smack about each other. It's one of those things, like if you're having a bad time in high school or college or whatever, you know, everything that goes down, it goes down in the lunchroom. That's where everything happens. And sure enough, it did.
The whole DC thing where he came up to him and he was like, oh man, like
instigator.
It was like, I don't know. I know that guy in school, he comes up to you, he'll be like, oh, I heard you want to fight this guy. Oh, you shouldn't have said this, but like they're like your friend, but they're not your friend, and they're like serious, but they're not serious, and then you're laughing, but you're not laughing, and I'm like, come on, guys, we're all grown ups here, and whatever. DC, just eat your cake and chicken and leave these people alone. But you know, all right. Speaking of the fight cast, I mean, I really had Cain Velasquez as the favorite in this one. Fabricio Verdum, as you know, I always talk about him, always super impressed with him. But I just didn't think he had what it takes to beat Cain. I mean, to me, Cain is really the best of the best ever since he beat my hero, Brock Lesnar, in the octagon. But no, in all seriousness, always looked amazing ever since, you know, we even saw him beat up Nogueira live in Sydney. Going into this fight, did you have the same sentiment? Did you think that Cain was going to beat Verdum?
For sure. I mean, watching Verdum over the years, I think people, including myself, are still struggling to come to terms with the Verdum we're seeing now, because he was like this awkward striker who never had great takedowns. He'd go for trips, and if he couldn't get the fight to the ground, he'd have tough fights for years and years and years. And it's like, over the last few years, he's completely evolved himself. He's flipped the script and revolutionized himself. And I guess we're all still used to seeing that. And then you got Cain Velasquez. I mean, he's never looked bad, other than the time that he got knocked out by Junior Dos Santos, and that was the perfect example of getting caught. Not to make any excuses, but yeah, you know, he just looks so devastating. Those comparisons to him being the new Fedor, and he just looks so, I don't know, like even the way he beat Brock Lesnar, like, he didn't just outstrike him, but it's like Brock Lesnar's wrestling wasn't even a factor. So there was just a lot of things going for Cain Velasquez. You mentioned embeddeds before. The only thing that I wouldn't say swayed me, look, in saying that, Verdum's like, he's the kind of guy, he's going to ruin your multi-bets. He's the guy that's going to make you poor and, you know, wearing a barrel because you don't have any clothes to pay your debts off. He's sneaky like that, you know. He's done it many times. Obviously, Fedor, you know, the Fedor fiasco of '87. I'm still crying over that. He's that guy that he, you know, like if I was a betting man, I would never bet against Fabricio Verdum, and I learned that way before this fight. And he was so confident in those embeddeds. It's amazing. Like, I never pay attention to that kind of stuff. The countdowns, they're all so biased. They can make any matchup look completely dead even. And, you know, the embeddeds, I feel like they're more raw, but sometimes they have the ability to do that. But I was just like, what do you know, Verdum? What do you know that we don't? He was just so ridiculously confident in those embeddeds. And I don't know, part of me was like, I don't know. What is going to happen? What if something happens? What did you think of the fight? What did you think when the fight actually started?
Well, when it started, I thought, here we go, because Cain Velasquez was being Cain Velasquez, throwing these combinations, and Verdum was there, and he was still standing with him, still being able to exchange punches. But at the start, Cain was landing a bit more effectively. And then when he started putting him up against the fence, I thought, all right, here we go. He's going to tire him out. He's going to keep him up against the fence. And then by the sort of fourth round, he'll be so exhausted that he'll beat him. But obviously, the fight didn't quite turn out that way. I mean, Verdum's just super impressive. His striking and his Muay Thai, his clinches, very, very good. And Cain just, look, he didn't look the same to me. I thought he looked physically just a little bit softer than usual. But obviously, he was away with an injury. But in terms of getting tired, he got tired quite quickly, a lot quicker than I thought that he would. And a lot of his combinations just didn't carry as much power as before. He would throw out a lot of punches that didn't really do much. And I was very, very surprised with it. It was a side of Cain I had never seen before. Fabricio Verdum, extremely confident. And yeah, what amazes me about him is when he goes on his back, you really can't do anything to him. And I don't think there's many people out there when they go on the back and you're like, all right, I just want this guy to stand up because I'm too afraid to do anything. And he's just one of those guys. He's just got a spectacular grappling game. There was that one moment where he did go for a guillotine and try to sweep him over into mount, but couldn't quite do it. And then obviously near the end, he was just picking him apart with punches. And Cain went in for that telegraph takedown and finished him off with that beautiful, beautiful guillotine. I was just blown away by Verdum. And yeah, it was a tough outing for Cain Velasquez. He took a lot of punishment as well. What did you think of the fight, Cass?
This is a tough one, right? I want to talk a few things about Verdum, and then I'll sort of give you my breakdown of what I saw of this fight. First of all, congratulations to Fabricio Verdum. Masterful performance. My hat's off. You know, thunderous applause. What he did was he did exactly what he needed to do. And I think Fabricio Verdum's almost like the new Nogueira, where he takes punishment. Sometimes he doesn't look the greatest, and then boom, he ends up throwing out a submission and winning the fight and completely turning it around. And speaking of Nogueira, I mean, there are a few fighters in the heavyweight division over the last couple of decades people consider the greatest. Nogueira is one of them. Fedor was another one, and Velasquez was meant to be this generation's greatest of all time, the new Fedor. And Fabricio Verdum has beaten all three of them. I mean, what does that say about Fabricio Verdum? Is he the greatest heavyweight of all time? I can't congratulate the guy enough. In saying that, all right, haters, light your torches, get the pitchforks. I'm not 100% sold, all right? And I'm gonna. This is what I think, right? You mentioned how you can't really do much to Fabricio Verdum when he's on his back. Well, Mark Hunt fared well. Mark Hunt did well, and I mean he was way more gas than Cain Velasquez. Travis Brown was on the ground for quite a lot of their fight, and he seemed to do fine against Fabricio Verdum. He didn't get submitted, and that was over 5 rounds. So that's another reason why I thought, look, Cain Velasquez, surely he's been working on his submission defense. I think he'll be fine. If he hits the ground, I wouldn't be worried. When he first came out, Cain Velasquez, as soon as he took his shirt off, I was like, what's going on here? The love handles were a lot more lovelier than usual.
More noticeable.
They were. And Cain Velasquez has never been a ripped guy, but he was not in the same shape. When he started jumping around, I noticed, I'm like, oh man, he's looking way, way, way softer. I don't know. Just physically, he looked completely different. He looked a little bit nervous to me. And when the fight started and he went in there, to me, he did not look good at all from the very beginning. At all. Even when he was putting Fabricio against the cage, he didn't look good at all. He was getting tagged nonstop. And I feel like for the first, 3, 4, however many minutes, the commentators completely missed it. Joe Rogan, who I like and I'm a big fan of, was saying how, Fabricio Verdum looks tired. I was thinking to myself, no, he doesn't. Cain Velasquez looks really tired and really marked up. Like, Cain Velasquez against Junior Dos Santos would do such a great job of coming in, slipping punches, putting him against the cage. And it's like he tried to do the same thing. I don't know whether his timing was off or what, but it's like he did the same thing, except this time he got caught with every single punch coming in. His face was absolutely busted up. Verdum, he landed, shots to the body, Verdum did, which obviously helped gas Cain Velasquez out. There was that point where Cain Velasquez he had him up against the cage and he threw up a knee. It was the laziest knee I've ever seen, and Verdum took him down. I don't know, just even when Cain was striking, he just looked off, he looked uncoordinated, he looked gassed straight away. I don't think Cain Velasquez looked very good at all, and to me it's weird because I don't know whether it was embedded or countdown or what, but Javier Mendez was saying how he was trying to urge Cain Velasquez to come down to Mexico, get used to the altitude, and Cain didn't want to. He said, no, I'll be fine. And then eventually, or someone else told Javier Mendez, and then he tried to convince Cain Velasquez, and then Cain ended up reluctantly agreeing, and they came out 2 weeks early. Verdum, on the other hand, was there for months. I don't know how many months exactly, but 2 months, 3 months, something like that. Cain Velasquez got there for 2 weeks, completely gassed. I honestly think this Cain Velasquez, and I'm not saying this is the Cain Velasquez that we're going to see from now on, but was an absolute shell of his former self. He did not look as fast. He did not have the same power. His everything looked lazy. The takedowns, the kicks, the everything. I don't know whether it was ring rust, whether it was the altitude, and I'm probably the billionth person to say that. I don't know whether it was octagon re-jitters, because he hadn't fought in 2 years. I don't know whether it was an adrenaline dump or he was more emotional in this fight. I don't know what it was. And I may sound like I'm coming up with every excuse in the book for Cain Velasquez. I mean, I don't care. I'm not a Cain fan more than I am a Verdum fan. But I just don't think this was the Cain Velasquez that we've seen in the last few years. And I mean, detractors of Cain Velasquez are going to absolutely love this, because there's so many people who were annoyed that Cain Velasquez was the champion, but he was always injured. And his last 4 fights over I don't know how many years have been Junior Dos Santos, Bigfoot Silva, Junior Dos Santos, and Bigfoot Silva. Well, I think, slightly different order. But those are the only people he's faced. So I know a lot of people are happy that Cain is not the champion and Verdum's gonna be the champion from now on. But I mean, that's my take on Cain Velasquez. But just another last little note on Verdum, which makes this all the more impressive though. Those wins over the men who were considered to be the greatest of all time, Nogueira, Fedor, and Cain Velasquez, the way that he beat those guys, it's like he submitted Nogueira. That was Nogueira's that was his world. He submitted Fedor, who, even though was a fantastic striker, got a lot of wins via submission. I mean, any win over Fedor is impressive, much less a stoppage. And then, don't forget Mark Hunt. He knocked out Mark Hunt. And then against Cain Velasquez, he outstruck him. The only reason why he submitted him was because Cain didn't want to stand up with him anymore. So, nuts. This card was, to me, the epitome of bizarro world. Everything just went opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting what you said about Verdum. I'll be honest. To me, I'm sold on Verdum. I mean, a lot of points I was like, I'm not sure if he's quite there yet. But after everything that you've said that he's accomplished, I can't argue with the results. And I'm going to have to say now on record that I think, he is a very, very good fighter, and the jury isn't out anymore for me. I think he's really reached that peak, and the best heavyweight in the world. I was going to say DC, he put up an interesting Instagram that I'm going to read out. He wrote, "We all have our ups and downs. The days always seem darkest right before there is sunshine. We hear a lot of whispers and flat out criticisms. We will continue to press forward. Sad thing is, through the negative, something will get lost, and that's the fact that Verdum did a phenomenal job to become the champion. This is only the beginning for you, champ. You will be back better than ever." I guess he's talking about Cain Velasquez now. More fierce.
Shop closed, and that's what he was talking about.
Yeah, that's it. More fierce and more determined. I struggle to ride this because I know in my heart there is not a man alive that can beat you at your best. Let's get back to work and reclaim what's yours. You are I guess he's trying to say you are a hero to many. Cain Velasquez, including me. You are always the champ. Love you, brother, DC. And then he has a couple of hashtags there. So a very heartfelt message from him. And I mean, a lot of people are going to be like, Cain Velasquez wasn't at his best, and Verdum beat him because he wasn't at his best. But to that, I would say to those people, look, that's true. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be a victory that I'm going to take away from Verdum by saying Velasquez wasn't at the top of his game. I'm going to say Verdum beat him because Verdum did a good job. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt at this one because he really did do a very, very good job in this fight, and very, very impressive of everything that he was being able to do and come back from being released from the UFC to being the champion. So very, very big turnaround for Verdum, really showing us that MMA is just really unpredictable and you never know what's going to happen.
I think one of the reasons why I was saying that it's not that I'm not sold on Verdum, it's just I feel like a lot of his wins, they're very ugly wins. It's like even against Nogueira, which wasn't that long ago, it's like he was getting backed up and he looked so bad going backwards. I thought Nogueira had a huge chance. And then Nogueira, who's often displayed not the greatest fight IQ, ended up going to the ground. I think his ego got the better of him, and then Verdum got the submission. But look, in all, I mean, at the end of the day, it was like a 50-50 chance, regardless of betting odds and things like that. You either win or you lose, or draw, or no contest, or whatever. 50-50 chance, let's just call it that. So I think Cain Velasquez could have won, but he didn't do everything he needed to prepare. Whether it's fix his cardio, rehab more, whatever the case is, he didn't, and Fabricio Verdum did. He was incredibly hungry, which at his age, and considering how long he's been in the game, is immensely impressive in on itself. Fabricio did everything he needed to do to win, like in pretty much all of his past fights, and therefore he won. So, hats off to Verdum. If they ever do have a rematch, I hope it's not in Mexico. And you know what? I'm saying that because of the altitude, not because I have anything against Mexico. But man, just another side note, it's crazy how long since like the Brock Lesnar fight, which is, I don't know, 2010 or something, how long the UFC have really been trying to push Cain Velasquez as, the Mexican champion. He's so Mexican because they want that, the Mexican demographic to really, buy into the UFC. And it's like, you finally have this fight. The first time UFC 180, Cain Velasquez versus Fabricio Verdum, it didn't end up happening. Cain Velasquez got injured, and I think the UFC took a big gulp and were like, oh man, I hope we're not screwed. Now it finally happens, and he loses. It was always meant to be the storybook ending. Cain Velasquez winning in Mexico. The Mexican winning in Mexico with the biggest prize in the world. And it just completely fell apart. I mean, the UFC are fine. I'm not about to say that, UFC's dying and MMA's dying and this and that, but what a fail as far as plans go.
Oh, absolutely. It's just one of those sports that you can have a plan. Now, I guess the interesting thing is what's going to happen next. And I mean, it just affects everybody, especially the fans here in Australia. Obviously, if Cain Velasquez would have won, potentially he could have fought here in November at Etihad Stadium and defended his title against somebody. Now that Fabricio Verdum has won, it's very likely that he'll be fighting Junior Dos Santos next. Having that rematch, obviously Dos Santos had beaten him previously, has no interest in fighting over him. And a lot of people are pegging that fight to happen in Brazil. So, and I mean, that does make sense. It wouldn't make sense for those two guys to fight in Australia in November. The question is, Cass, what do you think? What do you think happens next to the champion? Do you think he does do a rematch with Junior Dos Santos, or do you think Stipe Miocic gets the title shot that people think he might deserve?
I do not think Stipe Miocic gets the title shot because he's only won one fight in a row. He lost not too long ago. Who did he lose to?
Junior Dos Santos, he lost.
There you go. Yeah. He lost to Junior Dos Santos, and now he beat Mark Hunt. So I think the only I guess, and look, at the end of the day, I'd be happy with Stipe getting the next title shot. I think with the heavyweight division, the rules are different because it is such a thin division, which is there's not that many elite heavyweights, which is why if you win 1 or 2 fights in a row, you could potentially be fighting for the title. I think in theory, Arlovski's probably the most deserving. Because he's on, like a 3 or 4 fight win streak. All exciting fights except for the Brendan Schaub fight. I mean, the way he brutally knocked out Travis Brown. I think if you want to make it exciting, have a rematch, Verdum versus Andrei Arlovski. I think that's like a fan favorite fight. But again, you could make the rematch, Junior Dos Santos versus Fabrizio Verdum. I would honestly pick Junior Dos Santos in that one, assuming he doesn't look like he did against Stipe Miocic. But on paper, he's the better boxer and the better striker, and I think he's got the wrestling, the takedown defense to keep Verdum from taking him down. I mean, if Fabrizio Verdum beats Junior Dos Santos, I don't want to sound like, those memes where it's like, Chris Weidman, not the real champ until he beats The Undertaker at WrestleMania, but I don't know, if Fabrizio Verdum beats Junior, then I'd say I'm completely sold. Because, again, we know Fabrizio's ground game is fantastic. I think his striking is the only thing that's in question. And to his credit, he did fantastic against Cain Velasquez. But, I don't know. Yeah, whatever. Make Junior Dos Santos or make Arlovski. I don't think Stipe should be next in line, to answer your question. Or, if you want sexy dancing on the card, give him Ben Rothwell.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a great fight. And it's interesting because Fabrizio Verdum, whether people don't think he is legit as champion or people do think he is legit as champion, he's not a huge name. He's popular, but he's not a household name. So having Stipe versus him, I mean, people want to watch it, but it's not going to be a blockbuster fight. It's not going to be a pay-per-view blockbuster fight, but because both guys are very interesting guys, but they're not household names. They're not household heavyweights. So having him fight at JDS, and if he does beat him, grow his profile even more, I think makes sense than putting them together with Stipe. But the reason why it affects Australia is obviously it doesn't look like this fight is going to happen in Australia for UFC 193. And it sounds like we're a little bit selfish, always talking about UFC 193 being a...
And we are.
And we are, that's right. Being as the show does come from Melbourne. But it sort of takes away a big match that could have happened in Australia. And now this is going to be a title that's probably not going to be held here in Melbourne. Obviously, Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold, they want to fight in New York, but who knows if that's going to be legalized. Let's say it is. Then it's a case of, will Ronda Rousey fight in Melbourne, which is something that a lot of people are thinking, hopefully she does, and then another title fight. But at the moment, to me, it's starting to look like this UFC 193 event may be leaning more towards Rod Laver Arena. But, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. If it doesn't get legalized in New York, Luke Rockhold versus Chris Weidman and Ronda Rousey, if she retains her title, versus somebody here in Melbourne, I think that could still sell at Etihad Stadium.
Yeah, I think it's a safe bet, given that there will, unless there's someone unless I've hit my head and I've just completely forgot about someone really obvious, it looks like there'll be no Aussies fighting for any titles. Steve Kennedy, he's fighting at I think the UFC Berlin. Maybe he can rack up a win streak in 6 months. I think he's making his UFC debut, but yeah, no,
even
right.
even if somehow miraculously they had Cerrone versus RDA, it's just not a big enough fight to have at Etihad Stadium.
It's not. What you could do if Conor wins the title, I mean, obviously Australia, what's the word? Australia was founded by convicts, basically. There's a lot of, there's a lot of British people from England, people from Scotland, a lot of people from Ireland as well. And I think people were giving a shit on in the comments because Ireland is not in the UK, so we'll be sure not to ever say that again if we did. But there's a huge Irish population here, so I think Conor McGregor versing anyone for the title, that would be a good step towards selling out Etihad Stadium. But other than that, no, you're absolutely right.
That's right. And then looking at that matchup, you're thinking, will they? If he did win the title, they would probably hold off to that huge stadium show in Ireland rather than bring him down to Australia. So it's all very interesting. And for fans listening at home, the difference in the stadiums is Etihad, and we just spoke about this with Dave Meltzer, but we'll just repeat it one more time in case you missed it. Etihad Stadium is about around 56,000. We're not sure how many people they could fit in with a UFC setup. Rod Laver is just around 20, under 20. It is the place where the WWE hold their shows, their house shows when they come down to Melbourne. Also the place where they have the Australian Open final for the tennis. A great little stadium, but not massive by any means. Pretty big for the UFC because they do a lot of smaller stadiums around the place. But this Etihad Stadium thing could really be a record-breaking show, which is why we keep talking about it. But yeah, I guess that's just another matchup that can't happen, Cass.
Yeah, on one hand, I want the stadium show to happen just because it excites me. And if we do potentially have the stadium show and we have 2 title fights, we could be potentially little old Melbourne could be potentially looking at holding the record for the biggest attendance in UFC history, and that would be awesome. At the same time, if we get 2 title fights and it's a nice intimate show in Rod Laver Arena with a great card, I'll be happy with that. I think that's us done talking about UFC 188, and that's another show in the bag. That's enough from us for another week. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate you guys listening every week. Big thank you to our guests, Mark Hunt, Dave Meltzer, Bobby Lashley, and Gunnar Nelson. Really big thank you for all those guys for jumping on and chatting with us. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to us and, of course, listening to them. Don't forget, subscribe on YouTube if you are listening on Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, or any other podcasting platform. Please don't forget to leave us a rating. We always really appreciate and we always read the ratings individually. Leave us some comments on YouTube and, of course, follow us on Twitter at SubmissionAUS. And, of course, as has become custom, before we let you go, before we sign off, Dennis, any last words for the fans?
Yeah, a really big figure in sports and entertainment passed away this week. Dusty Rhodes, one of the true legends in professional wrestling, a guy that's had an effect on pretty much every pro wrestler out there, and guys like Chael Sonnen and other MMA fighters like that. So we want to send our condolences to Dusty's family and dedicate the show to him.
Awesome. I'm really happy you brought that up. Yeah, definitely. Rest in peace, Dusty Rhodes. He spent many, many years entertaining fans and us as well. So big thank you to Dusty Rhodes for all that. Guys, we'll be back next week.